Okay, looks like we are live. Sergeant, will you begin your recording?
PC recording is underway.
Thank you. Recording to the cloud in progress as well. Good morning and welcome to today's New York City Council remote hearing on small business. For security verifications at this time, will all panelists please turn on your videos? I repeat, all panelists, please turn on your videos. Thank you. To minimize disruption, please place all electronic devices to vibrate or silent mode. Thank you. If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. I repeat, testimony@council.nyc.gov. Chair, we're ready to begin.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm Councilmember Julie Menon, Chair of the Committee of Small Business, and I want to welcome you to our oversight hearing today. I first of all want to acknowledge my colleagues who are present, Councilmembers Ang, Councilmember Velasquez, Councilmember Caban, and we'll be joined by others, and I'll announce them as they join. The beginning of the new session presents an apt time to reflect on the successes and challenges of SBS last session. Our oversight hearing today will be both retrospective and forward-looking as we review the past programs SBS established to help businesses survive the economic devastation caused by the pandemic, and also gain a better perspective of what the new administration will be doing this session to help small businesses recover and thrive. As the former chair of Manhattan Community Board 1, I helped lead Lower Manhattan's resurgence after September 11th, and I'm also a former small business owner myself. I personally understand the complexities of establishing programs to help small businesses survive a crisis, and I appreciate the work of SBS to help businesses through the COVID-19 emergency. SBS has disbursed over $175 million in grants to small businesses and has provided services to hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers since the start of the pandemic. Nonetheless, as we review SBS's response to COVID-19, there were clearly numerous problems that hampered the ability of the small business community to equitably access needed financial relief and services. According to then Mayor Bill de Blasio, SBS's Employee Retention Grant Program was created to disperse money to mom and pop and neighborhood stores. However, attorneys' offices, physicians, and dentists were the three professional groups that received the most amount of money through the program. SBS's Small Business Continuity Loan Fund failed to disperse money to 7 council districts, 5 of which were in the Bronx. Since the programs were designed as first come, first served, and lacked proper language access, more affluent neighborhoods disproportionately qualified for aid. These issues of inequitable disbursement of services continue to impact SBS's response to the pandemic. SBS's low to moderate income storefront loan program require business owners to provide a personal guarantee on the loan. It's frankly shocking to me that the previous administration established a loan program to benefit small businesses in low-income neighborhoods and then created the possibility for these small business owners to lose their personal assets if they were unable to repay the loans. I don't understand why the city created a program that would literally cause catastrophic financial harm to small businesses, as the possibility of these business owners failing to repay them could further harm low-income communities in the future. Of the various loan and grant programs SBS established during the pandemic, I also want some clarity on which programs were city-funded as opposed to federally or privately funded. The city's small businesses deserve to know how much money the administration allocated to supporting them through this crisis. This hearing will also present us with an opportunity to review SBS's efforts to connect local businesses with federal support. Fair Share NYC was a program created to help the city's access federal relief funds, such as the Paycheck Protection Program. Of the over 200,000 small businesses in New York City, SBS has helped over 4,600 businesses apply for federal relief. That is around 2% of businesses. I look forward to hearing from SBS about why so few businesses use Fair Share NYC, and I hope to get an update on the number of businesses that access federal relief through SBS's other two related programs, Fair Share NYC Restaurants and Curtains Up NYC. Beyond the successes and challenges that SBS encountered in the programs they established in response to the pandemic, it's incredibly important to also review what programs were never created. Comparing SBS's response to the pandemic to the approaches taken by other cities shows some areas where SBS failed to take action. For example, cities across the country, including Seattle and San Francisco, developed specific programs to fill empty storefronts, to confront storefront vacancies caused by the pandemic. To my knowledge, SBS never took action to fill vacant storefronts, and I look forward to a conversation with the commissioner today on what creative approaches the agency is looking into to deal with storefront vacancies. Regardless of the challenges that I just outlined, however, we are now in a new session, and SBS is under the leadership of a new commissioner. I look forward to working together to provide the city's small businesses the help that they deserve, and to hearing what new programs this administration is planning on implementing to help the city's small businesses recover from the pandemic. I'd like to thank my central staff team, Senior Counsel Stephanie Jones, Senior Policy Analyst Noah Meixler, my Chief of Staff, Jonathan Zott, and Legislative and Budget Director Zarina Dochev for their hard work. And I'd now like to turn it over to our moderator, Noah Meixler, to go over some procedural items. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Menon. I am Noah Meixler, Senior Policy Analyst to the Committee on Small Business, and I will be moderating this hearing. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called on to testify, at which point you will be unmuted by the host. During the hearing, I will be calling on panelists to testify. Please listen for your name to be called, as I will periodically be announcing who the next panelists will be. At this hearing, we will first be inviting testimony from the Department of Small Business Services, followed by testimony from members of the public. During the hearing, if council members would like to ask a question of the administration or a specific panelist, please use the Zoom raise hand function, and I will call on you in order. We will be limiting council member questions to 5 minutes, which includes the time it takes to answer your questions. For all panelists, when called to testify, please state your name and the organization you represent, if any. We will now call representatives of the administration to testify. We will be hearing testimony from Kevin Kim, Commissioner of the Department of Small Business Services. We will also be joined for questions by Jackie Mallon, First Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Small Business Services. At this time, I will administer the affirmation. Administration panelists, please raise your right hands, and I will call on each of you to individually respond. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Commissioner Kim?
I do.
First Deputy Commissioner Mallon?
I do.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Commissioner Kim to present his testimony.
And Noah, can I just interject before the commissioner starts? I just want to say we've also been joined by Majority Whip Brooks as well as Councilmember Brewer. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kim?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair Menon and members of the Committee on Small Business. Good morning. My name is Kevin D. Kim, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Small Business Services, or SBS, and I'm joined today by SBS First Deputy Commissioner Jackie Mallon. It's really an honor to be before the council for the first time as commissioner, and I look forward to working in partnership with you as we continue to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. At SBS, we aim to unlock economic potential and create economic security for all New Yorkers by connecting them to quality jobs, building stronger businesses, and fostering thriving neighborhoods. Now more than ever, we are focused on supporting the hardest hit New Yorkers, which include our minority and immigrant communities. I'm pleased to testify today on SBS's response to COVID-19. The pandemic has tested us all, but small businesses have been hit especially hard. Many face closures, worker shortages, and disparities in access to financial relief, like the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. In response, our agency launched and expanded 51 initiatives to support recovery, many in record speed. We help job seekers, our community partners, and business owners adapt to the new normal by pivoting the way we delivered our services. All in all, SBS delivered over 337,000 services during the pandemic to these groups, including fielding over 80,000 calls to a newly created hotline and holding over 860 webinars, which were attended by more than 56,000 people on topics ranging from financial assistance and mandate updates. Please allow me now to share a few specific examples of how we helped each of these groups. For job seekers in training, SBS leads the city's public workforce system for adults, called Workforce One. Within the first 2 weeks of business closures, our 18 Workforce One career centers began to offer services online. Between March 2020 and the end of 2021, SBS helped connect New Yorkers to more than 29,000 new jobs via our centers. These jobs had an average wage of $18.22. In addition to direct connection to employment, SBS developed new resources for those looking to pivot into new career paths. For example, during the summer of 2020, SBS launched our Career Discovery NYC website, a centralized resource to assist New Yorkers in exploring new careers and trainings that has had more than 79,000 visits to date. Supporting our community partners and commercial corridors. Simultaneously, SBS provided support to our local community partners, particularly in the hardest hit neighborhoods. Our outreach teams went door to door in over 170 commercial corridors. We work closely with over 100 community-based organizations, including the Chambers of Commerce and our bids, to make more than 8.5 million face coverings available when we were faced with shortages and supply chain issues. We also formed a partnership with the Mayor's Office of Recovery to launch the Commercial District Recovery Safety Plan, which brought together bids and city agencies on a weekly basis to address on-the-ground quality of life and safety issues. Promoting small businesses. In fall 2020, SBS launched our Shop Your City campaign to encourage New Yorkers to support local businesses during the holidays and every day. Our website features a list of businesses organized by groups and boroughs, along with maps to help New Yorkers discover new businesses to support. In May 2021, SBS followed up on these efforts with a 30-day Shop Your City challenge, which featured a photo contest, promotional videos, and consumer incentives. For MWBEs, we also continue to recruit and certify eligible MWBE firms during the pandemic. In addition, we upgraded our online MWBE directory to more efficiently connect MWBEs to new contracting opportunities. We also launched the MWBE Mentors Program, the first peer mentorship program to help NYC's certified MWBEs expand their access to resources. MWBEs also played an important role in the launch of our PPE reopening and supplies marketplace. SBS created the marketplace to provide an effective online platform for local suppliers to sell PPE products to other businesses. 33% of the businesses on the platform were MWBEs and 44% were local small businesses. There were other challenges, including Hurricane Ida and, in some cases, looting that businesses had to face during the civil unrest over the summers. Amid the pandemic, some small businesses were further devastated by Hurricane Ida, and others experienced looting following that civil unrest I just mentioned. In response to Ida, SBS staff helped nearly 800 impacted businesses with services ranging from hosting resource webinars in various languages, going door to door with information on recovery services, and connecting businesses to financial assistance. In partnership with the Mayor's Fund and other financial and community partners, SBS also launched a small business emergency grant program for businesses impacted by looting and other damages to their storefronts. Through this initiative, SBS helps small businesses obtain $10,000 grants to help with recovery, including repairs, security systems, and more. In terms of our access to capital programs, throughout the pandemic, SBS launched 5 grant programs and 2 loan funds, which connected small businesses to more than $167 million. SBS also invested over $10 million to strengthen the city's commercial corridors and support local economic development organizations. This included over $1 million of new COVID-19 commercial district support grants for organizations serving neighborhoods most impacted by the pandemic, and over $700,000 to support open streets. Additionally, SBS oversees the largest network of business improvement districts in the country. These 76 bids delivered over $332 million in supplemental services over the last 2 fiscal years. As the chair mentioned, though, there were issues in addressing the equitable question of distribution of these federal funds. The Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, EIDL, were 2 vital federal initiatives designed to help businesses weather the pandemic. But the first round of these programs were greatly flawed, and banks favored larger applicants, while New York City's smaller and minority-owned businesses were less likely to receive funding. During the second round of funding, SBS expanded our offerings to include additional free webinars on how to apply, one-on-one application and technical assistance, and assisted with direct connections to lenders, which helped increase access to these much-needed funds. As we enter a new phase of the city's recovery, we have learned again what we already know, that New York City small business owners are as tough as they come, and that small businesses are vital to the city's recovery. SBS will continue to provide guidance, support, education, and advocacy to help them build back stronger and more equitable than ever before. Finally, I would be completely remiss if I did not take this closing moments just to recognize the extraordinary work during the pandemic, not of just SBS, the agency, but of SBSers, the same mission-driven men and women whom now I have the privilege of working with every day. When we talk about SBS response to COVID, the many personal sacrifices of SBSers must be acknowledged. It's a story that also must be told. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm excited to be part of this new chapter, and I'm glad to have your partnership moving forward. I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you. I will now turn it over to questions from Chair Menon. Panelists, please stay unmuted if possible during this question and answer period. Chair Menon, you may begin your questions.
Great, thank you so much. And before I begin the questions, I want to also recognize Councilmember Mealy has joined us as well. So Commissioner, thank you so much for your testimony. I have a number of questions, and then we'll turn it over to our moderator for my colleagues to ask questions. So after SBS established the Employee Retention Grant Program and the Small Business Continuity Loan Fund, which I think you recognized and I recognized in my opening, failed to equitably disperse financial relief across the 5 boroughs, SBS then announced in November 2020 the Low to Moderate Income Storefront Loan, which was a $35 million program to disperse funds to small businesses in low to moderate income communities. The loan, however, required a personal guarantee to receive the loan, which obviously enables a lender to then pursue a business owner's personal assets, such as their home, if the business fails to repay the debt owed. Why did SBS require a personal guarantee?
Well, thank you for that question, Chairman. And as you reiterated, just access to capital is something that is a priority of yours. Access to capital for small business owners in particular, small business owners in LMI districts are a priority of yours, and it's definitely has and always will be a priority of SBS's. The personal guarantee that was included in there, as you also know, in terms of most of the loans that get given out to businesses, personal guarantees are often required. And in the situation we have here, the good news is that we have yet to have any defaults. The businesses that have taken advantage of this loan program in a time when access to any capital was so limited, they've been able to manage through working with our lenders. And that's the other part of it, is that the lenders that have participated in this program are those that have been working very closely with all of our borrowers to make sure that if they need to be flexible on working with them to extend terms, they've been doing that. And so up till now, we're happy to report that there have been 0 defaults in those businesses that have partaken and taken advantage of this loan program.
Okay, I I just want to reiterate this so strongly. It is, in my opinion, unacceptable for the city of New York to require a personal guarantee of small business owners, these businesses, particularly in low to moderate income communities where it's meant to help them. So I can't say this strongly enough. I don't believe the city should be using any kind of personal guarantee. But I do want to know, I mean, we've spent time looking backwards, moving forwards, what is SBS going to do then to help so many of the small businesses that are struggling? It's been estimated that approximately a third of the city's 200,000 small businesses are going to go out of business because of the pandemic. And what is the relief that SBS is going to be able to provide them?
As you mentioned, the past, we were talking about unprecedented times, difficult challenges, some of the most challenging times in your and my lifetime we'll ever see. Going forward, I think the message has been clear that under this administration, economic recovery, the small businesses are top priority of this administration. On day 4 of the administration, Mayor Eric Adams announced his executive order to help small businesses address fines that they've been facing over the years that may be unduly burdensome, even if they don't impact public health and safety directly. And so I'm proud to be co-chairing that interagency working group with Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer. And what we're going to be doing is taking a very close look. And I know the council has worked on this in the past as well, but going forward, we're going to take a very comprehensive look at all the regulatory agencies, all the fines and violations that are being imposed, especially on first-time violators, and looking to see where we can reduce fines, where we can also find cure periods instead of fines in the first place. And then taking that one step further, we're also looking to see what codes we can eliminate from the books altogether. But at the same time, we're also looking at something we've been hearing from small business owners everywhere, that the inspections and the inconsistency of inspections is unduly burdensome. So we're also looking at how do we change the culture of regulatory agencies doing inspections? How do we make it a customer service orientation versus a punitive structure where you go in and you're looking for fines versus with the attitude of looking to educate, especially those who are new and first-time business owners. So as we look into the consistency of training, as we look into how to relieve the burdens of fines on small business owners, I think we're sending a clear message that under this administration, that small business owners and economic recovery go hand in hand, and that's going to be a top priority.
Okay, and first of all, very glad to hear about fine reduction. When I was DCA commissioner, we instituted the small business relief package of 25 reforms to lower fines. I strongly believe that has to be across every single agency. So I fully support the mayor's executive order on that and would like to see it go even further to make sure that every single agency is doing that. I do have a few more questions about the programs that SBS had, though, to help support small businesses, because one of the things we want to do in this hearing is we want to see what programs worked, what didn't work. So in the event of any other kind of disaster, that we make sure that the city has robust programs to help small businesses, but at the same time, we want to be forward looking and make sure that SBS is doing everything it can to support small businesses right now. So the Fair Share NYC program, which obviously was a program which SBS connected small businesses directly to PPP. The stats say that SBS helped over 4,600 small businesses apply for over $400 million in PPP and emergency income disaster loans. There are, as you know so well, over 200,000 small businesses. So that's only about 2% of small businesses that participated in the Fair Share program. Do you know why so few businesses participated, and what do we need to do moving forward to ensure that small businesses are able to access federal help when it's available?
So I think that's a really important question, because it goes to the point of all the lessons that we learned and what we can do better going forward. I think in particular, just to reset, as we all know, the unbelievable circumstances everybody was working under. As an agency, for example, when we had to shut down very quickly, at the time, the remote work capability was limited. Not everyone had laptops that they could log on and start working from home. And I think it took a while, but quickly, SBS got each of their employees' laptops to work from home, and then they were soon back online and initiating programs like the hotlines and doing outreach to ethnic media markets that hadn't been done before and reaching out to new partners. But that is the lesson I think we've learned, is that there needs to be better resiliency programming. We've learned from Hurricane Ida and Hurricane Sandy in the past, where we've worked closely with a lot of businesses to get them prepared for unexpected disasters. And I think that applies to us as an agency as well, that now that we've learned this experience of how quickly we can pivot when we needed to, how do we get ourselves ready to prepare the communities hardest hit? How do we reach out to them better? Is it just emails? Is it going to be learning that there has to be a better use of social media? In certain communities, they use different social media channels that isn't just text or WhatsApp. You know, the Chinese American community, for example, relies on WeChat. So these kind of language accessible communication modes, how do we take advantage of that? At the same time, Mayor Adams has really emphasized the agencies getting into the communities, deeper into the communities. While we work, as I mentioned before, with the biggest bid network in the country, 76 total, we also need to do a better job connecting with the merchant associations and community groups that may not necessarily be able to form their own bids. And that's something that we're doing now with bringing mobile units out that can reach deeper into the communities. So I feel as if the lessons learned from the past are definitely helping to shape how we respond going forward, even prior to another disaster, and hopefully, knock on wood, nothing comes in our lifetimes again. But the idea that we need to be resilient and trained for disasters beforehand applies to us just as much as it applies to the small business owners.
Okay, two more questions before I turn it over to my colleagues. And let me just say, we've also been joined by Councilmember Krishnan. And I do want to say one thing about the bids. I absolutely believe that the administration should be giving more funding to bids, particularly in the outer boroughs, to smaller bids. I've been speaking about this for the last couple of months. We want to make sure that there's bid equity. I think there's incredible bid inequity. And so some of the smaller bids that really need to be supporting those small businesses the most need additional support. So two more questions, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues for their questions. A September 2020 report by Yelp found that over 7,000 small businesses in New York City have permanently closed. Does SBS have any updated figures on the number of small businesses that have closed in New York since the pandemic began?
Let me turn this one over to my first deputy, Jackie Mallon, because I know that there were some numbers related to the census tract, the most recent census tract numbers. Jackie?
Sure. Sure. Thank you for the question. I don't think we have an exact number, but there was a recent analysis done using Census Bureau of Labor Statistics information analyzing differences in wages and employees and whatnot. And so using that, looking at now versus a period prior to the pandemic, we could see that it looks like about 11% of the businesses in New York City have closed, or like 26-ish, about 1,000. We can send you a follow-up with the specifics if helpful, which is a little bit higher than pre-pandemic, which was typically about 9% of business closures happen in a year. This at 11% is a little bit higher, but not as bad maybe as people would have predicted or we could have envisioned. So that's what we know so far. And that does not include, by the way, non-employer firms.
I definitely would like to see those statistics sent to our committee, because I find it, it just walking the streets anywhere in anyone's community, you see vacant storefronts. And so the number seems considerably higher than that. And so I really want to make sure we're drilling down on the numbers, that we get this information, and that we get a real handle on how many businesses have closed since the pandemic. Last question I'm going to ask before I turn it back over to the moderator is, other cities across the country, and I mentioned this in my opening statement, have taken specific action to help fill empty storefronts. So in Seattle, for example, the program Seattle Restored was announced to match vacant downtown storefronts with pop-up shops and art installations to create vibrant and engaging streetscapes. Does SBS have any programs to help storefront vacancies?
So I know that we had partnered up with Cha Sha Ma to launch Storefront Startup. It was a program that helped entrepreneurs access free commercial space for 1 to 3 months. I think traditionally the organization had put in artists in the vacant spaces because they're a nonprofit arts organization, but we partnered with them and encouraged them to put in small business startups via one of our strategic impact grants. And I think that's a program that we're looking into more to expand and hopefully address the critical need that you just so aptly pointed out, that the storefronts being empty is not just an economic recovery issue. It also leads to public safety issue, which is another top priority of the administration. With fewer people needing or being out in the streets to go and shop and walk the streets themselves, I think that public safety is jeopardized as well. So we know that getting these stores filled with new entrepreneurs, with new ventures, is going to be critical for both public safety and economic recovery for the city.
Absolutely. So I want to strongly encourage SBS to pursue that. We did that after 9/11 very successfully with programs like Art Downtown and Music Downtown, and it helped to activate the street fronts. It helped to support restaurants and other businesses by bringing more foot traffic to those areas. So now I'll turn it back to the moderator for my colleagues' questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on other council members to ask their questions in the order they have used the Zoom raise hand function. If you would like to ask a question and you have not yet used the Zoom raise hand function, please raise it now. Council members, please keep your questions to 5 minutes. The Sergeant at Arms will keep a timer and will let you know when your time is up. You should begin once I have called on you and the Sergeant has announced that you may begin. First, we will hear from Majority Whip Brooks Powers, followed by Councilmember Mealy. Majority Whip Brooks Powers.
Clock is ready.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, Majority Whip.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And it's good to see you, Chair Menon, and my committee colleagues today. We're recovering from this pandemic, but our small businesses are still struggling to recover and need our support. I wanted to ask some questions concerning the equity of SBS's recent funding programs to support small businesses across the city. Let me take a pause also, and just to add and welcome you, Commissioner Kim, in your new role, and congratulate you as well. SBS's reporting data makes clear a large portion of funds for the agency's business support programs went to businesses in council districts containing economic cores and prosperous areas, such as Manhattan Central Business District and other wealthy outer borough communities. In my district, 23 businesses received a total of about $100,000 from the Employee Retention Grant Program, and one business received a $75,000 small business continuity loan. Many districts in Manhattan received more. So what can SBS tell us about factors that contributed to the distribution of support funding? Were eligible businesses located citywide? What work did the agency undertake to ensure equity in the disbursement of the support programs? Did the agency contact businesses in every borough or council district? And can the agency commit to improving its outreach among immigrant-owned businesses who may need resources in additional languages. And I have a couple more questions, but I just want to stop there to allow you the opportunity to answer those in case we run out of time.
Sure, thank you for that question. It's a little bit challenging for me in my new role at 6 weeks in new administration to fully answer maybe, and we can get back to you on more of the specifics on the outreach. But I do know that one of the things that did occur during the pandemic was that the entire agency's resources shifted to try to help as many small business owners as possible with a focus always. And I think this agency is something where we're unique in that equity is the lens that we try to view every one of our programs and the implementation, the creation of the programs. And that's something even in my 6 weeks here that I've seen over and over again. I know that they did reach out to create new partnerships with new community partners. They also did an extensive ethnic media outreach to try to reach more immigrant communities whose first language was not English. The creation of the hotline, that was also accessible in a number of different languages. So I know that efforts were made, but I think given the extraordinary times and what occurred, we can always do better. And I think those are the lessons that we're trying to learn going forward. As for this administration and as for my role, equity is the top priority for SBS when we look at how we are going to continue to create new initiatives, to implement programs, to focus on getting deeper into the communities. As I mentioned earlier, the bids do a fantastic job. Our chambers of commerce do fantastic jobs, but we have communities that are not necessarily engaged on that level as well. And that's our responsibility to get deeper into the communities with our mobile units being dispatched into areas where we know the applications themselves were low. And that definitely means that people either didn't know about it, or if they knew about it, they didn't know exactly what to do. And we feel that that kind of targeted outreach is going to be more effective. We've also learned that email doesn't necessarily work the same way amongst different communities, and that we do have to figure out ways through more texting, hopefully. And there are issues with privacy concerns and whatnot with texting, but if there's a way to get people opted in through texting versus email, that alone, I think, can make an impact. And then I talked about the different social media channels that different ethnic communities around the city also rely on. And those are specific things that we're looking into currently.
Thank you. And just really quickly, the final two questions I have, because the city has enacted stricter public health rules that compared to surrounding counties. Many of my district's small businesses have seen a decline in volume as customers who don't want to comply with a lot of and Madam Chair, I just asked for an additional few seconds just to ask this final question, if that's okay.
Of course, yes.
Thank you. And so even through the mask mandate, which is now shifting, they saw a decline. And I wanted to know if SBS has heard about this trend from businesses, and also what the agency is doing to prepare businesses for the next phase of the pandemic protection measures, including the end of the indoor vaccine mandate in terms of showing the proof.
Yes, and as you know, today is a very big day in the city. The mandate has been relaxed, where business owners will no longer have to check for proof of vaccination before allowing customers to enter their restaurants. And I think that is going to partly address your concern that you raised. I think the main thing is that throughout the pandemic, SBS made, in some ways, in my personal opinion, a heroic effort by going door to door into commercial corridors in the height of the pandemic. And that's something we need to do more. I think we need to leverage our partners, the bids, the chambers of commerce, the merchants association, the community boards, and the smaller neighborhood associations that often don't get as much communication from the city as they'd like. I know as a former community board member as well, that those are the outreach efforts that we need to do more. And I think that that'll help address some of the concerns you've raised. Again, I think the resiliency, the experience that SBS has in preparing small businesses for disasters, and our emergency response unit, also when there is actually a major fire or disaster, and their years of experience in handling that, I think all come into play in how we can better serve the communities that were the hardest hit and need our help going forward to understand the constantly changing mandates, and to work with them to give them the access to capital they need to thrive.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Councilmember Mealy, followed by Councilmember Krishnan. Councilmember Mealy.
Clock is ready.
Good morning. I want to just salute you, new commissioner and my chair. I want to just piggyback on two questions. As a new commissioner of SBS, could you describe what's your administration plan to help businesses recover from this pandemic, and what kind of new programs you're going to put out announcing to help new business owners or the ones who are still here? That's one question. And then could you give me a breakdown of how many bids in like Brooklyn? Because I spoke to a couple of the bids, they said no outreach was done for them. And I'm trying to open up new bids in our community, because I was able to work with some of the store owners that instead of closing, they could partner together to stay in business. And they, both of them shared the rent, the light, the gas. And going forward with Con Edison and their light bill just tripled. Do you have a plan for the small businesses to combat this mass increase on electrical bill? And my last question is the pop-up mom free space for 3 months. How is that distributed through the districts? Because I know a lot of my stores would have loved that. I have numerous corridors of vacant property stores. So could you give me the outreach on that pop-up mom, the space that can help all communities? And congratulations. Looking forward to working with you.
Well, thank you, Council Member. I'll just try to get all four of the questions. I might have miswriting one of them down, but in terms of the pop-up shops, that's something we specifically worked with an arts nonprofit called Cha Sha Ma. And I think that what we could do is to try to look for other partners like that in all districts in the city. So I guess we were a little bit limited in what stores they had available. And so, but that's an excellent point that we'll look into reaching out to more partners who can work with us on these kind of initiatives to get these stores filled. Because as I mentioned, it's a public safety issue, it's an economic recovery issue, and it's really the vibrancy we need to get the city back stronger and more equitable than ever before. So I will definitely look into that. In terms of the utilities question, I think that's a challenging question that surprised everybody. Me personally, as a homeowner and just former business owner myself, it's a shock that what happened, and I know that there are agencies and the city is looking into that. And we hope to have more of an update. But SBS right now in particular, we're doing what we can with our business owners to try to help connect them to Con Ed for better explanation on what is happening and how they might work for their particular individual account to reduce their bill utility prices. But that just has been a surprise to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of our plans going forward, as you know, we launched Black Entrepreneurs NYC, BNYC program during the pandemic. It had been kicked off just prior to the pandemic, but we still launched it in the midst of the pandemic. And through that, we've been making concerted efforts to help Black entrepreneurs with the particular needs that they face in terms of access to capital, in terms of networking, in terms of mentoring. And those are all programs that we've worked on during the past 2 years. So I think this idea that we want to make sure that businesses that historically have not had these same opportunities are being met where they are and trying to connect them to those resources that will give them the same opportunities to succeed. And then I think you had one other question and I don't remember it. Jackie, did you write it down by any chance?
I think you might have asked how many bids were in
Oh,
Brooklyn.
right. How many bids? Yes.
In Brooklyn?
Yeah.
I think it's 22 or 23-ish.
Well, we can get you that answer. We'll
Yeah,
get you
it's
that right
it's around that, a little over 20.
And finally, I guess I have 8 seconds. I see the countdown, but
Thank you.
also how to help businesses. We are definitely going to be more technology focused, and we're looking for ways to definitely incorporate better
Time
technology.
expired.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Please, I would need that because I'm trying to create new bids also. So I'm looking forward to talking to someone. And I believe it may be Jackie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Councilmember Krishnan. Councilmember Krishnan?
Clock is ready.
Good morning, everyone. First, can you hear me okay? I had some sound issues. Okay, great. I had some sound issues before, but good morning. I want to say, first of all, a big welcome to Commissioner Kim. It's so good to see you today. And I want in particular, thank you very much to start out with for coming so early on in your term to my district to visit our immigrant-owned small businesses. We had a nice walk together and spoke to a number of small business owners about the issues they face. And I do appreciate that hands-on approach to make sure that you're coming out to our neighborhoods on the ground and hearing directly from the businesses that we serve. So I really appreciate that. I have 2 questions along those lines. One is, as you heard too when you came to our visit in Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, one of the biggest inequities that we saw during the pandemic when it came to small business aid was the fact that our immigrant-owned small businesses found it very difficult to access government resources, services, and programs in language accessible, culturally accessible ways. And for me, I in particular think of our Asian American small businesses, and if the services aren't accessible, then no matter how good the programs are on paper, they're not going to reach the communities that we need them to serve. So I know that this is an issue that you are very closely paying attention to and care deeply about. And you heard that as well from our small business owners during our visit. So I just wanted to get a sense of what going forward SBS will do to ensure that we have greater language access when it comes to the delivery of our services for our small businesses.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Krishna, first of all, for the warm welcome, and secondly, for inviting us out to your district. And, that's something that I'm planning to do with every single council member who invites us. And even if you don't invite us, we might still do it anyway. But, I see Councilmember Mealy already. All right, my inbox is going to get full very quickly. But that's really, but in all seriousness, that is how our agency can keep up with what's going on the ground, as you mentioned, because things are changing very rapidly. Mandates are changing, but so are business circumstances. There are businesses all throughout the city that are just hanging by the thread. And then at the same time, when we were out in Jamaica, Queens with council members Natasha Williams and Linda Lee, we saw a number of businesses that were just launched during the pandemic. So there's a lot of hope in the air. I think that we need to be on the ground as SBS to see and meet and touch the people that are in both situations, those who are still trying to get through this and have not closed a single day during the pandemic, but find themselves now just barely hanging on. And then at the same time, there are the many immigrant owners who are just going and saying, look, I have no choice but to start a business. I need to feed my family. I need to send my kids to school. And this is the kind of on the ground efforts we need to do more of. And I think our mobile van unit outreach program that we're going to be working on is really going to do some of that. But in terms of the language access, council member, as you know, that is an important issue that, my parents were immigrant small business owners who didn't have any access to government resources because back in the 70s and 80s, things weren't translated into Korean, for example. But today, we do have at least 9 languages that we are delivering our services in. And I know that we can do more because every day in your borough, for example, 130, 200 languages are being spoken. So we can do more in that area. But for the Asian American businesses, we have an Asian American Small Business Task Force that we are using to leverage our local community partners to get the word out about all of our programs. We realize as SBS, we are a 300-person agency that we can't get the word out on every single program every time by ourselves. And we need our community partners. We need you as council members and as close partners in these efforts.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands, I will turn it over to Chair Menon for a second round of questions. Oh, I see Councilmember Krishnan has his hand raised.
Yeah, 2 questions. I stopped because I saw 40 seconds. I tried to.
Yeah, you're mindful of the clock. I appreciate that. Well, if the chair permits, I just have one more question to ask. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for the response to. And I know that this is something that also, as you mentioned, is personally a critical value for you as well to make sure we have language access. My other question, shifting gears and thinking about services that were crucial during the pandemic, is a program that I know many small businesses and legal services organizations really depended on to ensure that our small businesses were receiving services. And that was the Commercial Lease Assistance Program. And as a former legal services lawyer myself, I know how vital it is for our small businesses to have that program. And not only that, for it to be expanded, because coming from the housing setting, I can see how predatory practices affect tenants. But I know in the small business setting, where commercial leases can be far more one-sided, many small businesses don't even have a lease. The concerns of displacement of small businesses and skyrocketing rents are very real. So, and on a separate note, I think that's also why we do need commercial rent stabilization in the city, and it's long overdue.
Time expired.
But my question is on the Commercial Lease Assistance Program. What is SBS thinking in terms of ensuring that it expands and more small businesses can take advantage of it?
Well, thank you for that question. As you mentioned in your comments, small businesses rely on proper legal advice, proper accounting advice to be able to thrive and to survive. And for our Commercial Lease Assistance Program, I know that from February 2018 to February 2022, we've served over 1,000 unique businesses and provided over 2,400 services. And I think that it has been tremendously helpful to these small businesses from everything we've heard from them. Feedback is the free legal assistance on the leases and lease renewals and back rent negotiations have allowed many of them to stay in business. So we do recognize the importance of providing businesses with a suite of resources and tools, including legal assistance that you have referenced here. So we'll be looking very closely at how we can continue and continue to support small businesses in these areas.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands, I will now turn it over to Chair Menon for a second round of questions. Chair Menon?
Great, thank you. Thank you for Commissioner for answering these questions. I have a few more and then we'll turn it over to my colleagues to see if they have a second round. So according to Controller Brad Lander's federal stimulus tracker, SBS has been budgeted over $296 million to help the city's small businesses survive and recover from the pandemic. Of the $296 million, how much has SBS spent?
The $296 million in total or for this fiscal year? Can you just clarify, please?
So according to the tracker, the controller is saying that has been the amount in total that the city has spent for small businesses. So I'm going off of his tracker.
Okay, let me ask my first deputy to jump in on this. She's my fact
Okay.
person. Jackie?
I think the 290 is made up of money that came to SBS and also flowed through to EDC. I think about a little over 150 of that is actually SBS, and we'll have to get back to you with specifics. And but I think to date it's something like 110-ish that has been spent. But let us come back and give you a real answer. I'm doing that all off the top of my head, which is usually in the ballpark. But if you want exact, we'll have to come back to you.
Okay, so if you could come back with specifics of how much has SBS spent during the pandemic, how much is left unspent, and then what are the plans for the unspent funds? What are the priorities? What are the plans moving forward?
That'd be great. Just to clarify, though, I think that the controller's tracker is looking at FY22 specifically. So I don't know, are you asking us to go back to 20 and 21 as well?
Yes, because the whole point of the hearing is both looking backwards for the past 2 years, what worked, what didn't work, so we can make improvements. And then, of course, forward looking of any unspent funds and any new funds that will come in. What are SBS's plans to help support small businesses? So we really need to look at both aspects.
Fantastic. I got it. Great.
Okay, thank you. Now, another question I have is on marketing and promotion, because I'm a big advocate on believing that the city needs to do even more to market and promote our small businesses, either through NYC and Co., the city's marketing and tourism arm, through the bids, which, Commissioner, we've spoken at length about. So I understand that in November 2020, SBS launched Shop Your City, which was a $500,000 marketing campaign to urge New Yorkers to shop local. What are additional plans that SBS has to launch marketing and promotional campaigns to support the city's small businesses?
I think we're looking at a variety of programs that we already have and that we're hoping to launch in the future. But in terms of, as you said, I know the importance of promoting local businesses and how much you've been a champion of that throughout your career and in your new role as well. I think some of the programs that we did that were necessarily the kind of the citywide Shop Your NYC type campaigns, but that were also very effective during the pandemic is the one I mentioned where we created this marketplace for the local manufacturing companies that had to pivot during COVID. A lot of them were in the business of making X, but then during COVID, they pivoted to start making face masks, hand sanitizers, all the gear, PPE gear that was needed. And then when we partnered up, we had two of our programs, the Tech Talent Pipeline program, where we're fully promoting more technology educated individuals to get involved. And then we also have our manufacturing and industry partnership program. And so we were able to combine the two to create this marketplace. It's PPE marketplace that allowed small businesses, local small businesses who were pivoting to manufacture the PPE equipment to supply the local small businesses that were benefiting from that. So I think that was another program where, I think local can take on many different meetings, but that was just as important to support our manufacturing small businesses as well. And then I know I'd also mentioned the MWBE. We've always had a directory, but during the pandemic, we improved on our current directory and made it much more user-friendly and with keyword search functions where somebody could just type in masks, and then you would get the MWBE local businesses, one of the 10,000 MWBE certified New York City businesses that supplied masks, for example, could be connected to anybody, another city agency or an outside individual who needed to transact in that way. And I think that was also a big promotion. But I think we will be revisiting very closely the broader campaigns and partnering with NYC Co. and other agencies to emphasize to tourists that will now be pouring back into the city, hey, you don't just need to go to the chain businesses, but there's a lot of unique New York City centric places that we'd love for you to go and support.
Good, that's great to hear. And the last question I have is sort of a broad question, which is, will SBS under your leadership take a different approach to helping small businesses than the direction that the agency took in the last couple of years? We've obviously highlighted a lot of problems that we've seen with the past 2 years. So moving forward, what are the lessons learned? What are the new approaches that you plan on taking as commissioner?
So without going so much into the past administration, I think that for myself, I'm really excited about this opportunity and to honestly have a committee of members who really truly support small business and understand small business. And then you personally having your small business background as well. You know, I think that both of us come from an angle where we understand the challenges of any small business, but also having been involved with city government enough and having been New Yorkers pretty much our whole lives, we also understand the concerns of small businesses in LMI census tracts, for example, who aren't necessarily still getting the same opportunity. So there's always room to do more. But as I had referenced earlier, you know, I think the focus for me is on making sure that everyone in the city knows that we are here. We have tremendous resources. We have tremendous staff and people here that are mission driven and want to help. And so getting the word out is something that I will spend a lot of my time. That's why I think visiting the corridors like you and I did last week and that Council Member Krishnan and I have done in the past is really important, because there's nobody who understands their council districts better than the council members. And so the partnership between us is going to be critical in doing that. And then the focus on technology. I think that, you know, we're constantly discussing how can we help small businesses scale, and how can we help small businesses compete with the bigger entities that are now online. And there's a lot of pressure for them to feel like, even the smaller mom and pop stores, to feel like they need to be selling online in some form or fashion. But how do we as an agency help them not just get those surface tools like a website or, you know, hosting a website, but how do we teach them to really take advantage of all of the suites of resources that are online, and to discriminate individually that, hey, this software program or this particular tool might be beneficial to them, and to really see the data and the analytics and how being online for this particular purpose might help double their sales, for example. And I think it's got to be to the point where we can hold their hands if we need to get them to that point. And I think that's where our agency is going to focus on language accessibility, education, deeper into the communities, technology-driven solutions. So we're really looking forward to working with you on all those things.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I just want to emphasize a point that you raised about lack of knowledge of SBS's services. I completely agree with that. And in my time as DCWP Commissioner, I unfortunately found that to be very true. There are so many businesses that are not aware of SBS, or not aware of the services that the city provides. So the more that you can do to make sure that our small businesses are aware of that and then access them, it was going to be incredibly important to help them through this very difficult time. So thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands, we will now turn to public testimony. I'd like to remind everyone that, unlike our typical council hearings, we will be calling individuals one by one to testify. Each panelist will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please begin once the sergeant has started the timer. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the Zoom raise hand function, and I will call on you after the panelist has completed their testimony. For panelists, once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you, and the sergeant at arms will give you the go-ahead to begin upon setting the timer. Please wait for the sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. I would now like to welcome Andrew Ridgey to testify. After Andrew Ridgey, I will be calling on Michelle Shang and then Lisa Soren. Andrew?
Clock
Yes.
is ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Andrew Ridgey. I am the Executive Director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance, an association that represents restaurants, bars, and nightclubs in the 5 boroughs. Before I get directly to my points, I just want to thank Chair Menon and members of the committee for hosting this. We're thrilled to have such a strong advocate for small businesses in this role. I also want to thank former Commissioner Doris, Stephen Picker, the food and beverage industry partnership, and really the SBS team who has had to just really do so much in such an impossible time of crisis. So thank you. I know it sometimes goes unrecognized or underappreciated, but with the resources that you did have, we do appreciate what you did. Instead of focusing on all, failures or lack of communications or challenges, I really want to try to be as constructive as possible with my comments so we can ensure that we have policies in place to support these businesses in the future. Now, first, we need to make sure that we have multiple agency interaction with small businesses. We need the information to be clear, we need to be concise, and we need to stop with inconsistent enforcement and conflicting compliance information that's sometimes provided from various agencies. And we think SBS, although not an enforcement agency, plays a critically important role in coordinating this information, coordinating inspections, and ensuring that the information that's provided to businesses is not only done in just the various languages and the various means of communications that were mentioned by some of the members earlier, but also in a way that connects with small business owners to the reality on the ground. It's not too much legalese. And it's not scary. Sometimes notices go out that if you don't do something within 24 hours, we're going to yank this permit or you're going to get this violation. And it creates fear instead of compliance and education that we should seek. We also need to make sure that the programs are accessible, they are equitable, and they are brought in directly to these businesses, whether it's through text messages or some of these other places, and making sure that even monies are allocated to boroughs based on the numbers of businesses that they have, and they're having the proper outreach to all of these different sectors. We also understand the city's desire to announce new programs and new policies to support small businesses, but we'd urge the city to ensure that if City Hall is going to make an announcement, that the program is fully baked and all the details are available right away. Too often in the past, new policies are announced, business owners hear there's a new policy, only later to learn that after they've gotten allocated money to purchase, outdoor heaters, for example, that those heaters are not going to be acceptable. Chair, if I may, just one more moment.
Absolutely, please go on.
Thank you so much. And we're submitting written testimony, so all this will be there, and obviously happy to follow up, but making sure that these policies are fully thought out before just the concept is announced, because that unfortunately creates uncertainty. And then sometimes when a policy is finally rolled out, it's not exactly what those business owners anticipated or thought they were going to have access to. Also, we understand throughout the pandemic, many of the policies were coming down from the state. So it wasn't even in the city's control. But we need to do the best job to ensure that SBS has a leadership role in City Hall and good relationships with state lawmakers as well as state agencies, because too often there was a policy that was announced, it wasn't always clear. In so many cases, it was unfair to small businesses, and then it was kind of thrown into the lap of SBS to try to figure out and to try to educate business owners on. And frankly, they didn't even know what they were supposed to do by no fault of their own, but I think a failure of the entire government and regulatory structures, failure to fully think through and implement many of these policies. So again, I have a lot more. I'm happy to answer questions, but just wanted to thank all of you again. And clearly know we all need to work together to help bring our small businesses back, because they are critical in bringing our city back. So happy to answer any questions and follow up after this hearing as needed.
Thank you. I will now turn it to Chair Menon for questions.
Great, thank you. Andrew, I really want to thank you for your testimony, and more importantly, I want to thank you for your leadership throughout this whole pandemic. Small businesses are so lucky to have you as their champion. So you mentioned in your testimony that oftentimes you felt the city would announce programs that weren't, as you said, fully baked. So what new programs do you think the city should announce that would really help small businesses at this critical juncture? And how does the city ensure that there is proper communication to the small businesses, in your opinion, so that there isn't this level of confusion that certainly existed the past 2 years?
Sure. Well, let me give you one example that I think is in the process of happening, and then one where I do believe there needs to be more attention to. Early, and I want to give credit to Mayor Adams, I think it may have been within his first week of taking office, announced that the city was going to review all the violations that are issued to small businesses and make recommendations on which ones should allow a cure or a warning before a monetary penalty is issued. We think that's an important, great step. The focus should be on education and training first, and issuing penalties as an absolute last resort. I think the council also plays an important role there, because we know there's sometimes the permanent bureaucracy, as you know, that can be difficult to nudge. And we want to ensure that these violations and cure periods that are implemented are done in such a way that, you know, a new commissioner or a new mayor or just change in the overall view of small business can change this. We need to ensure that cure periods and warnings are built into the legislation, built into the law. That's something I think is going to be important. The second would be, which I believe you mentioned, I know you have a lot of experience and a lot of success in, is promoting New York City. We need to get people here comfortable going out, eating, drinking, socializing, supporting these small businesses, particularly businesses that have not always been part of some more of the popular programs. For example, I know NYC & Co has been doing more outreach to businesses that haven't participated in Restaurant Week in the past. But I think we need to continue to do more, and I think we need to ensure that the agencies and the individuals on the ground have the resources to reach those businesses and get them engaged. So I think those are two things that could be done. There's certainly, you know, a lot more, but I think there needs to be a constant focus on small business issues and a constant pressure forward to support them. It can't just be, let's talk about how great small business is and then leave it at that, which is what often happens, at least has in the past, unfortunately.
Great, thank you so much, Andrew. I'll turn it back over to our moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to welcome Michelle Shang to testify. After Michelle Shang, I will be calling on Lisa Soren and then Kathleen Riley. Michelle?
Clock
Hi,
is ready.
thank you, Committee Chair Menon and the Committee on Small Business for this opportunity to testify. My name is Michelle Shang, and I'm the Small Business Technical Assistance Coordinator at the Asian American Federation. Over the pandemic, AAF's small business team has worked with over 2,000 businesses to support the state's Small Business Recovery Grant, SBS's COVID Resilience Grant, as well as the city's Commercial Lease Assistance Program. We worked closely, particularly with Asian businesses, especially immigrant and limited English proficiency or LEP businesses, who are hit harder and earlier by COVID-19 and who continue to struggle. So today I'd like to share some of our main observations on how SBS responded to COVID, focusing especially on the concerns of immigrant and LEP businesses. The first issue I'd like to talk about is grant access. SBS's COVID Resilience Grant was a most welcome relief effort for small businesses, for whom cash flow remains the most urgent problem. We applaud SBS for creating flexible documentation requirements, which improved accessibility significantly compared to previous grant programs. But that funds were depleted a mere 2 weeks after the grant was open, however, it shows how urgent the need for financial assistance is right now. Very few businesses were able to access the grant, and community partners had little time for outreach. As a result, it was the most well-connected businesses who were able to submit applications. Businesses who struggle with a digital divide and language barrier did not even hear of the program. We strongly urge the committee to allocate further funding to COVID financial relief for our small businesses. The second issue I'd like to talk about is regulations and inspections. COVID safety policies placed a heavy burden on small businesses. Regulations changed frequently. There was no time for compliance education, especially in language, and untrained inspectors were pulled from various city agencies. As a result, businesses were hit with a slew of tickets during the pandemic on top of their financial struggles, sometimes for regulations they had never even heard of. For example, the open restaurant program, while offering a lifeline to the food service industry, involved a constantly changing carousel of minute regulations regarding outdoor structures, heating, etc. In contrast, AAF would like to point to the Key to NYC initiative, which included greater in-language compliance education and a policy of issuing warnings before violations. To this end, we'd like to thank the Asian Community Liaison at SBS for listening to community feedback and for working to increase language capacity at SBS. This brings me to my third and final point, which is about language access and accessibility. No matter what initiatives the city implements, they will not be able to reach immigrant LEP businesses who need them desperately unless there is greater language access and outreach into these communities. For example, information about the Fairer program, which offers fine reductions for commercial tickets issued during the pandemic, could have been much better publicized with SBS outreach, especially within immigrant and LEP business owners. We urge SBS to continue expanding its language access and to start moving its webinars and online outreach back to the streets, as in-person canvassing remains the best way to reach these business owners. To this end, AAF recommends that the City Council first allocate more funding to small business relief, second, move outreach and compliance education to in-person as COVID cases drop, third, allocate funding for SBS to partner with community organizations to conduct culturally competent in-language outreach efforts, and fourth, expand amnesty programs for violations on small businesses. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions. We'll also be submitting written testimony.
Thank you. I will now turn it to Chair Menon for questions.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to you. I don't have any questions, but Michelle, thank you so much for your testimony today. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Linda Barron to testify. After Linda Barron, I will be calling on Kathleen Riley and then Russell Squire to testify. Linda?
Good morning.
Clock is ready.
Good morning, Chair Menon, and thank you for the Small Business Committee for allowing us the opportunity to testify today. You know, the things that have been discussed here about the SBS services, people not knowing about them, I would say that's one of the #1 things that we hear when we're out providing on-the-ground services. You know, I'm not going to go back onto the last year, but the resources that were available as far as grant and loan programs, they fell short because they ran out in a quick amount of time and they didn't reach all the people that they needed to reach. Staten Island in particular, you know, while a lot of these programs are based on LMI census tracts, we're very different here, and we have like pockets of businesses that struggle that don't fall in the LMI track, so they have been left out totally altogether. And some of the MWE businesses, it's really just as it was formally said, it's the outreach, it's the on the ground outreach. We're involved in the Small Business Resource Network. The City Council funded us last year, which was tremendous. It's initially funded through a public-private partnership through the Peterson Foundation, and we're able to get on the ground and make people aware of these services, which has been key, where we've been able to make people aware of not only SBS services, but other services that are available. What I would like to say is there are a couple of gaps that I see. One is that new businesses that actually opened up just prior to COVID haven't been eligible for anything. They've been left out in the cold. We have a lot of new businesses that just aren't eligible for anything, and they're hanging on by a thread. In addition to that, more recently, we're hearing from commercial tenants and property owners that they're struggling with getting payment for rent and paying rent. And there is a state commercial lease assistance program. The program through SBS that provides commercial lease assistance doesn't go that far. It's really guidance on reviewing your lease and kind of making some recommendations. So I think those programs can be expanded. And also with the vacant properties that we're starting to see, I'd like to see more incentives for opening. We border New Jersey. There are other counties that New York borders, and they're doing much better than we are on that end. So if there can be incentive programs that are created that will ensure that business is open, but not necessarily, you know, a lot of the programs that I've heard about in the past that have been talked about through City Council are, you know, penalizing people for having vacant properties. I really don't think that's the way to go. The way is to incentivize, because we have a lot of small property owners that don't own large buildings. They own maybe 1 or 2 or 3 shops or buildings on a block, you know, locally in the small neighborhood. So those are the things that I'd like to say. I really do think that SBS, it's been encouraging. We've been meeting with the new commissioner and having an open dialogue with him about the things that businesses need. MWBE certification, we have to figure out how does it really, you can apply for MWBE certification, but if you're not getting any business out of it, it doesn't do you any good. So we really need to focus on some of that. And I just think in terms of the programs that are created, if we could look a little bit more towards just helping those startup businesses and the businesses in the underserved areas. And again,
Time expired.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now turn to Chair Manning for any questions.
So Linda, thank you very much for your testimony. And I'll say we are going to have a real focus in this committee on underserved areas. It's something that I've been really focused on, particularly with bid inequities and making sure that bids in the outer boroughs are receiving more funding to better market and promote their small businesses. Also want to just mention on MWBEs, that will be the subject of a hearing down the line where we are going to absolutely focus on that. So just want to let you know, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Lisa Soren to testify. After Lisa Soren, I will next be calling on Kathleen Riley and then Russell Squire to testify. Lisa?
Hi, my name is Tanisha and I'll be representing Lisa today. Lisa is the president of the Bronx Chamber of Commerce, and just want to thank you all for the opportunity to testify in this committee today. Over the last 2 years, we've worked closely with the Department of Small Business Services, and although there were many challenges, we've always been able to reach out and to address them. Some examples include the grants and loans made available to businesses, but never enough money available to our borough businesses, or the criteria for meeting the qualifications have been insurmountable, leading to a minimum amount of funding coming through into our borough. The saving grace for businesses, not only in our borough, but across the city, has been a 5-borough private-public partnership. Throughout the past 2 years, the Chamber has been grateful to partner with private and public organizations on key initiatives to provide vital services to Bronx small businesses, which have been disproportionately affected since the onset of the COVID pandemic. Our chamber is a proud member of the New York Small Business Resource Network, which launched in October of 2020 as a public-private partnership between the 5-borough chambers of commerce, Partnership for NYC, EDC, and New York Small Business Services, along with funding from the Peterson Foundation and the New York City Council through the 5-borough Chamber Alliance Initiative. This unique private-public initiative enables more than 50 business recovery specialists to deploy daily in commercial corridors and communities through the 5 boroughs, providing hands-on outreach, resource navigation, and follow-up support to small businesses. A clearinghouse of third-party, corporately supported programs, services, and organizations coordinated by EDC serves to augment the many city-managed programs available and provides our recovery team with a base of support to make referrals based on individual business needs. Access to financing, marketing, and e-commerce support, pro bono legal services, website development, and etc. The overall mentoring are the most common needs our specialists assist with. And in addition to that, significant time is spent communicating and helping business navigate the ever-changing labyrinth of COVID and other business regulations that impact them. Seeing that I have a few seconds left, the point is that with the 5 borough chambers, we are grateful for the $500,000 investment the council has made into this program last year, and our hope is that the council will fully fund this initiative at the level needed to sustain this important work moving forward. Thank you. I'll also be submitting this written testimony.
Thank you. I'll now turn to Chair Menon for any questions.
No questions. Thank you so much for the testimony.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Kathleen Riley to testify. After Kathleen Riley, I will next be calling on Russell Squire and then Randy Pierce to testify. Kathleen?
Clock is ready.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Chair Menon, for calling this hearing. Thank you to all the council members present, and also definitely want to extend a special thank you to SBS and the liaisons who've been dedicated to working with us and with restaurants to try to help them get through COVID-19. My name is Kathleen Riley. I'm the New York City Government Affairs Manager for the New York State Restaurant Association. And before sharing some of the reflections we had on COVID, I wanted to give you a few of the results that we got from a January 2022 survey to sort of set the scene on where the restaurant industry stands at this point. We found in January that 74% of operators said sales volume in 2021 was lower than 2019. 81% of operators say their restaurant's total costs as a percentage of sales were higher in December 2021 than December 2020. And 86% say their restaurant is less profitable now than before the pandemic. So we recognize that's just a snapshot, but it was taken nearly 2 years into the COVID-19 pandemic. We need to remember that for restaurants, the losses and hardships caused by COVID have been serious, but also cumulative in their nature. And if we just look at foot traffic in the door this spring and summer, we see volume starting to come back, so we hope. And restaurants that look busy, we have to remember that those establishments are digging a hole, and good foot traffic today won't just erase the losses of the last 2 years. This recovery is going to take time, and we appreciate City Council keeping that in mind when considering supportive and regulatory measures aimed at the restaurant and broader small business community. That said, we've reflected on the city's response to COVID-19 over the last 2 years and have the following list of ways that the city could have better supported restaurants and other small businesses. We also recognize that not every one of these ideas falls exclusively under SBS, and many would have required action from the mayor's office as well. So cooperation and communication with the state, more advocacy for the city to be treated on par with the rest of the state, early warnings when regulations were going to change, and consistent messaging about what the regulations actually are. Additional grant money, of course, I know this is shared across pretty much everyone who's testified so far, and equitable outreach and distribution of that money for both neighborhoods and industries that are most severely impacted by COVID. Additional mass distribution to businesses with all inspection or regulatory visits. Education enforcement with cure periods, especially for the very quickly changing COVID-19 regulations. Supportive programs to get people back into local businesses, including vouchers or other kinds of concrete incentives that make people want to go out and spend money in restaurants and other small businesses. Incentives and support for landlords to encourage them to renegotiate leases with their commercial tenants. A framework to connect restaurants to opportunities to feed food insecure people, and the scale to accommodate all of the interest and need for that sort of program. Finally, on Key to NYC, which I know lists today, looking back, if I take just a minute to address Key to NYC.
Please continue.
Okay, thank you. We would have liked to see an attestation allowance so that restaurants wouldn't have to have as many resources at the door for people coming into their space. Providing compensations businesses asked to enforce, both because they lost business and were being pulled into the public health enforcement sector, which isn't really their primary role, as well as providing protection, recourse, and other sort of support for employees, customers escalated screening encounters, and not just training, which training is good, but having actual support and protection for those employees would have been really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Russell Squire to testify. After Russell Squire, I will next be calling on Randy Piers and then Michael Brady to testify. Russell?
Clock is ready. Good morning, Chair Menon and other members of the Small Business Committee, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you this morning about what small businesses in our communities need. My name is Russell Squire, and I'm the chair of Community Board 8 Manhattan. Our Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island small businesses and small business owners who have been forced to adapt to curveball after curveball because of the ever-changing nature of the COVID-19 pandemic are a vital component of what makes our neighborhoods great places to live, and they are an essential part of our city's economic rebound. CB8 has worked hard throughout the pandemic to advocate for small business, to support and provide information to them, and we have heard from them about the challenges that they are facing. Broadly speaking, what our small businesses need from the city are flexibility in the short term and regulatory changes that reflect the reality of the challenges that small businesses face in the medium to long term. In terms of flexibility, as small businesses begin their recovery, New York City cannot continue to hamstring them with unnecessary fines and fees. The Small Business Forward executive order, signed by Mayor Adams earlier this year, is a great step in the right direction. But with each city agency still in the phase of determining which violations to adjust enforcement on, we need a fine and fee holiday for small businesses until the mayor's Small Business Forward plan can be implemented fully. In addition, while the Emergency Open Restaurants program has been an essential lifeline for the restaurant industry, many bars and restaurants cannot take advantage of it because of transportation infrastructure like city bike docking stations in front of their locations. The Department of Transportation should be open to moving this infrastructure to accommodate restaurants. For example, moving a bike dock across the street or further down the block doesn't decrease the availability of city bikes in that location, but it could make the difference between whether or not a local bar or restaurant survives. Further, just as the Emergency Open Restaurants program helped bars and restaurants, the city should explore creative solutions to similarly help other types of small businesses, which are still struggling to recover from the pandemic. In terms of regulatory changes for the longer run, our small businesses would benefit tremendously from streamlined points of contact with city agencies, rather than being forced to interact with multiple agencies for things like their various licenses and permits. This would save time and effort for small business owners who have enough on their plate as it is, and make it easier for them to get answers to their questions and responses to their needs. Our city also needs commercial rent reform in some form. So many businesses have to close permanently or move to an entirely new neighborhood because they are being priced out of locations they did business in for years, in some cases for decades and even generations. It is bad enough to see beloved longtime businesses close, but all too often storefronts remain empty long after the business that was there before has been forced to close. Small businesses provide the products and services that residents want and need, economic opportunity for owners and employees, character to neighborhoods, and even contribute to public safety by providing eyes on the street. So we need a solution that will allow small businesses to stay in business and our storefronts to stay occupied. Finally, we need action to address the spate of shoplifting we have seen, which has added to the burdens that small business owners are already facing. To conclude, helping our small business is vital to ensuring that the city comes back better than ever from the COVID pandemic. I want to thank the committee again for the time you're devoting to helping our small businesses and allowing me to testify. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Randy Piers to testify. After Randy Piers, I will next be calling on Michael Brady and then Thomas Gretsch to testify. Randy?
Clock is ready.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all the committee members. Your leadership is critical at this important time. Looking forward to working with you. I'm Randy Piers, Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. The Brooklyn Chamber is a proud member of the New York City Small Business Resource Network. It was launched in October of 2020, and it is a public-private partnership led by the Partnership for New York City, the 5 borough chambers of commerce, New York City EDC, New York City SBS, and it has funding from the Peterson Foundation and of course from the City Council through the 5 Borough Chamber Alliance. This is a unique partnership. It allows 50 business recovery specialists to deploy daily across the city in every borough, providing on-site support to small businesses, meeting them where they're at. A clearinghouse of third-party corporately supported programs and organizations coordinated by EDC augments the many city-managed programs available and provides our recovery team with a base of support to make individual referrals for individual business needs. Access to financing, marketing, e-commerce support, pro bono legal assistance, website development and tech support, general business coaching, and overall mentoring are the most common needs we assist with. In addition, a fair amount of time is spent helping small businesses navigate the ever-changing and sometimes confusing COVID and other business regulations that impact them. Our teams work very closely in partnership with the many business improvement districts and merchant associations across the city. Since its inception in October of 2020, the SBRN has served just under 30,000 businesses across New York City, with MWBEs making up close to 77% of full program participants and immigrant-owned businesses representing almost 40% of businesses overall. The Brooklyn Chambers team has nearly served 7,000 businesses, and we've added specialized capacity to serve restaurants and food establishments, which needed a heightened level of engagement. In addition, specialized tech support has completed over 350 websites for businesses. This is in-house that had previously had no websites. The SBRN also has in-house capacity to serve businesses in 8 different languages and access to language support in any other language that we may encounter. I'm proud of this work that we've accomplished so far. It's important work, and we're looking forward to continuing this and possibly expanding this work in the months to come, should the resources allow. The funding provided by the Peterson Foundation represents a $2 million investment, and the funding commitment is through September 15th of this year. And while the 5 chambers are grateful for the $500,000 investment the council has made in this program last year, it is our hope that the New York City Council will fully fund this initiative at the level needed to sustain this important work moving forward. Thank you again, Chairwoman Menon and the members of the committee for hearing my testimony, and I look forward to collaborating and working with you in the year ahead.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Michael Brady to testify. After Michael Brady, I will next be calling on Thomas Gretsch and then Paula Siegel to testify. Michael?
Thank you, Noah.
Clock is ready.
Good morning, Chairman, and always a pleasure to see you and committee members. Thank you to Noah and Sergeant Leonardo for all your work today to put this together. I know it's difficult during these trying times. I apologize in advance. I'll probably go over a little bit, but I will be submitting written testimony. I'm Michael Brady, the Chief Executive Officer of the 3rd Avenue Business Improvement District located in the South Bronx. We are the Bronx's oldest business improvement district, and we manage one of the Bronx's busiest transportation centers, greeting over 300,000 visitors daily. Our district has a ground floor vacancy rate of approximately 8%. That's down from a 27% vacancy rate during the height of COVID-19. Additionally, we manage the Bruckner Boulevard commercial corridor to our south along the Harlem River waterfront, and we've done that for the past 5 years or so. It's important to note that during COVID-19, our offices never closed. We never went remote. We doubled down on our services when other agencies and government pulled back. So just quickly, and my written testimony is much more specific in terms of recommendations and critiques. However, just specifically to comment on SBS's remarks this morning and just generally government remarks, statistics can be dazzling, but often are not reality. I'd like to know, are the data sets that were used this morning duplicated or unduplicated data sets? Are they representative of services requested and services delivered? Are these numbers subdivided by services the agency typically provides compared to COVID-19 assistance? And is this SBS data, or is it data gathered from chambers, bids, and other privately funded sources? To be quite honest, I take city statistics with a large grain of salt because, quite frankly, we don't even know how many businesses are in New York City. So how can we say how many have closed? They're just really important questions that we need to drill down on. There are several positive actions that I think that need to be acknowledged by the business community, particularly when it comes to PPE distribution from New York City Department of Small Business Services and the work of New York City Department of Transportation, and even this council with legislation that was introduced by council members Mark Jonai and council member Vanessa Gibson, now Borough President Vanessa Gibson, to help set a standard through local law 80 to have fines reduced. And even our small business committee chair, Councilmember Menon, during her tenure at the Department of Consumer Affairs, worked to set a new standard on how New York City can educate instead of fine, and I think those should be pursued. However, there is some significant constructive criticism that I think needs to be offered here, and I will just highlight several, and then I'm, of course, happy to answer any questions. Quality, life, and safety concerns. The commissioner mentioned this morning of the creation of recovery units that included several senior members of the administration to provide assistance in the areas of quality, life, and public safety. This program missed the mark significantly. And additionally, the program was only established after significant lobbying to city government that outer boroughs have the same level of access to city government as our Manhattan peers. Additionally, as issues have arisen and been noted, the New York City Employee Retention Grant Program was too small and not to scale, and could not even be considered as a Band-Aid, particularly when you had other private sector areas, for example, 3rd Avenue bid, when we raised $1.4 million when the city could barely squeak out a $100,000 loan to the entire Bronx. This questions why philanthropy wasn't engaged, why other case studies, for example, 9/11 and the financial collapse of 28, were not learning lessons where we had a guide in terms of what worked and what didn't work, things that we should really learn from moving forward. The Paycheck Protection Program, connection to assistance, in terms of SBS's role, only 2% of New York City businesses were assisted by SBS. That's appalling. How the hell did it happen? Why weren't we better suited for it? Why didn't we embrace technology sooner and faster? Similarly, with the New York City Business Continuity Loan Fund, it was underfunded and oversubscribed and not staffed appropriately, including issues with language access and also third-party capacity of vendors that were tapped to provide those services. We've already touched on the storefront loan program and the failures of that, particularly that the program was disingenuous from the start by mandating personal guarantees on business owners. The fair share program failures have already been highlighted above. And then, just to highlight, and then I'll conclude, but I mean, we could really go into detail on a lot of this. The workforce programs that were mentioned this morning said, yes, statistically 29,000 job connections occurred through Workforce One centers. But I'm really curious to understand what were those outcomes? Who got jobs and then retained those jobs? Also, the average wage was $18.22. When you account for growing inflation, public safety, and the cost of going to and from a job site, it's no wonder individuals didn't feel comfortable working in those conditions with those lack of resources. We have set and we will continually set our city up for failure unless we learn from our history and chart out strategic plans for our future. Pandemics are not going away. Crises are not going away. The only thing that we can change is to be proactive solution providers instead of reactive. So again, Councilmember Menon, I thank you so much for calling this oversight hearing. It is nice to have leadership in the council that does more than just hyperbole. So I am so grateful for you and your track record and your history here. And I really look forward to partnering in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Thomas Gretsch to testify. After Thomas Gretsch, I will next be calling on Paula Siegel and then Gal Yadwab to testify. Thomas?
Good morning, all, and thanks for this opportunity. Thank you, Chairwoman Menon from Queens, Councilmember Ung, Councilmember Krishnan, and Councilmember Caban, as well as SBS Commissioner Kim. It's an honor to be here. My name is Tom Gretsch. I serve Queens County as the President and CEO of the Queens Chamber of Commerce. I am not going to bore you and repeat lots of the details that my peers and my friends from the Bronx and Brooklyn and Staten Island offered. But let me just say this. Today at the Queens Chamber of Commerce, we speak 19 different languages. Some days that sounds great, and some days it's not enough. But we have the most diverse place on earth here in Queens and the rest of the city, and we need to be able to go out with the funding that was put in place by the Small Business Resource Network, funded by the private sector, to continue. We would be eternally grateful if the city council members were able to come together and fund this initiative. Over the course of the COVID, we hosted a twice a month Zoom call with all Queens-based bids, merchant associations, anybody who wanted to attend that had anything to do with business. And I can tell you, things were rough then, and up until very, very recently, like in the last week, things continue to be rough. The variant that hit us after Thanksgiving through the holidays was, I'm not going to say a death blow, but it was certainly a difficult time. Just to kind of reiterate this whole Small Business Resource Network, you should be happy to know, as city council members and others, never have the 5 chambers of commerce of the great city of New York worked together more closely. We are in alignment, and that should bode well for our future. We've hit thousands and thousands of businesses. I can tell you, in the largest geographic borough of the city of New York, just behind our friends over in Brooklyn, we hit 7,000 businesses and talked to them. That just wasn't just a knock on the door. It was involvement, it was help, it was support, with over 50 business resource folks throughout the entire city of New York. We will continue to work with all the bids and merchant districts across Queens County, and we want to make sure that this funding increases. The Peterson Foundation represented a $2 million plus investment, and that commitment is through September 15th. We are grateful for the investment of the $500,000 that council made to this program earlier this year, but we desperately need additional funding to allow the outreach to continue. This is not a once in a while, once in a blue moon type of event. We have ongoing challenges that are systemic that we have to get out and knock on doors. I will yield the rest of my time, barring any questions from this group. And thanks very much.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Paula Siegel to testify. After Paula Siegel, I will next be calling on Guy Yidwab and then Megan Rickerson to testify. Paula?
Clock is ready.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Paula Siegel. I am speaking today as Senior Staff Attorney in the Equitable Neighborhoods practice of Take Root Justice. Take Root works with grassroots groups, neighborhood organizations, and community coalitions to help make sure that people of color, immigrants, and other low-income residents of New York City who've built our city are not pushed out in the name of progress. Take Root is also a member of United for Small Business New York City, a coalition of 15 organizations and community groups fighting to protect small businesses and non-residential tenants from the threat of displacement. My colleague Olympia Kazi will be delivering testimony later this morning on behalf of United for Small Business in New York City. I want to express my thanks to all the council members who are here for this hearing. I'm glad to see folks who are not on the committee because this is an extremely important topic. And thank you so much to Chair Menon for prioritizing hearing about the impact of the pandemic. I realize this is an oversight hearing and a lot of the conversation this morning has been backwards looking, but I want to really urge us that the economic impacts of the pandemic are very much not behind us. I want to urge this council and the agency to continue direct relief funding for small businesses that were forced to close their doors when the pandemic began and have to date not been able to access any funds from federal, state, or city sources to help pay down the rent arrears that they accrued during the months when no revenue came in. Take Root provides direct legal representation to low-income small business owners via the Commercial Lease Assistance Program. Thank you so much to a contract from SBS to Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation A, or a subcontractor to Corporation A. Through that contract, in the years we've been in the program, we've counseled hundreds of small business owners negotiating with their landlords about rent and tenancy. Today, this week, it's the first week of March 2022, the most frequent case that I am getting through the Commercial Lease Assistance Program is a referral from a small business that still has 3 to 6 months of rent due from spring 2020. It's on their account with their landlord. The average arrears are about $40,000. And their first question is, where can I get the financial assistance to pay back my landlord so I can avoid eviction and I can avoid bankruptcy? Even if business came back after spring 2020 and they've been able to pay rent going forward after reopening, there's just no way for a business like a barber shop or a sewing machine repair shop to make enough money to pay for months when there was no money coming in. It's absolutely unreasonable. A lot of these businesses are not able to access the programs as they've been structured by the state or the federal government. They have structural barriers. The Paycheck Protection Program only protects people who pay paychecks. If you're a sole proprietor or a barbershop owner who rents out chairs, no paychecks, thus no Paycheck Protection Program. The state program was closed to anybody who in 2019 reported a negative.
Time expired.
Oh, excuse me. Would you mind if I just say one more thing?
Please continue.
Thank you so much. So another round of grants is imperative, but as Councilmember Shaker mentioned earlier, we also need to address the impact of out of control rents on the ability of small businesses to survive in New York City and really look carefully at rent regulation. I hope that this committee will be holding a hearing on the topic of commercial rent regulation on the heels of today's crucial conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Guy Yidwab to testify. After Guy Yidwab, I will next be calling on Megan Rickerson and then Jack Chodorow. Guy?
Thank you
Clock
to
is
the
ready.
committee. Thank you for the committee for the opportunity to speak today. The League of Independent Theater is an all-volunteer advocacy organization for workers and owners of small 99-seat or less theaters across all 5 boroughs. And we're also a member of the United for Small Business Coalition Paula discussed. These are small cultural businesses, and small-sized theaters contribute $1.3 billion in economic output, 8,400 full-time jobs, and $512 million in wages. And these businesses were among the hardest hit, the first to shut down and the last to reopen during COVID. Our industry is still vulnerable. When Omicron raged, many of our member theaters canceled shows yet again, forfeiting needed income to keep our audiences safe. Within our community, the elephant in the room is 2 simple and devastating words: back rent. During all the days when our theaters were closed during the first surge, Delta, and Omicron, we still owed rent. I've spoken with owners who owe upwards of $100,000 in rent, having been unable to pay any rent at all for months at a time. Small cultural businesses are not the kind of high return businesses that lend themselves to deep reserves of money required to weather the storm. The need for support is deep and still continues. Our community has also had a difficult time accessing support. Both state and local small business relief has often been limited to for-profit enterprises. As the chair noted, organizations like Shashama, Art Downtown, and Music Downtown play as much of a role in economic activity and employment as for-profit organizations, yet are often treated differently in pools of support. For example, as our members face eviction, the Commercial Lease Assistance Program that provides legal aid for commercial tenants is limited to for-profit enterprises. These services are critical now more than ever. Now that the eviction moratorium has ended, all that back rent is coming due, and they certainly can't afford to take on any more loans. They need direct support. I also want to respond to the concerns discussed today about vacant storefronts. We can't tackle the problem of vacancy without tackling the root cause, high and growing storefront rents. Businesses within our community have permanently lost spaces after rents have doubled or tripled, even during the pandemic. It's absurd that storefronts sit vacant, yet asking rents remain so high. As Department of City Planning noted in its vacancy report, spaces are sitting vacant because landlords are waiting for higher rent. That's why the League of Independent Theater calls on this committee to take action and reintroduce and pass commercial rent stabilization. Seattle implemented something similar during the COVID pandemic to prevent small business displacement during the crisis, and this would have a long-term impact here. It would remove the incentive to leave spaces vacant waiting for a national chain to pay double and allow businesses to predict their costs and have a sustainable long-term plan. I've had conversations where members have asked me if more help is coming or whether they need to start discussing with bankruptcy attorneys. With such a bleak economic perspective, they need confidence that if they continue operating, they'll be supported and expired. Please take action to enable nonprofits to access all SBS programs and reintroduce and pass commercial rent stabilization today. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Megan Rickerson to testify. After Megan Rickerson, I will next be calling on Zach Chodorow and then Jeffrey Bank to testify. Megan?
Clock is ready.
Hi, my name is Megan Rickerson. I own Someday Bar in Borum Hill, Brooklyn. I also co-founded Save NYC Bars, and I'm on the board with the Hospitality Alliance. I opened my business 7 months before the pandemic started, my first business ever. And I know this has already been highlighted, but the interaction with the agencies that oversaw the COVID protocols, speaking to other people and running my own business, the fear of operation, the fear of making a mistake when you were trying to do everything possible to do the right thing and function was anxiety provoking, almost debilitating as an operator. And I was trying to do the right thing the entire time, but I still was terrified to operate because if something did happen, I had no access to anyone. I didn't even know who was inspecting me half the time. I realized the city and state that, miscommunication, but then speaking to others through the advocacy work that I started doing, as it's already been spoken to, the inability for brand new businesses to receive any funding. I didn't close for one day. I furloughed everyone. I worked by myself. I learned how to cook everything in my kitchen. I made cocktails. I didn't have any access to the RRF because I stayed open. All of these things are real problems, and there needs to be communication between the businesses, the SBS, the enforcers, on top of dealing with inspectors who I know were also trying to do the right thing, but were wildly uneducated. I had to reach out to Andrew to ask him a question because I knew that I was right, but the inspector insisted that I was wrong, and I had no recourse. Thankfully, I had some resources that I could reach out to, but that is an anomaly. I am very lucky to have that, where the majority of people don't in their situations that are similar to mine. I have a good friend that has been operating with an outdoor dining situation since the beginning of the pandemic that last week was told after a year and a half, it's wrong. And she's spoken to multiple people and there's just no consistency. We need consistency. Money is crucial, but consistency is more crucial to operate. And if you demand us to be health inspectors and do the right thing, clarity is the number one most important thing. I also realized that these were put together out of necessity, and we were in chaos, but there was also a dehumanization of us as people and business owners. I felt villainized a lot. And that's just, when you talk about needing small businesses, that's not the way you treat people. There was a lack of empathy. There was a lack of consideration for what was happening. And I get it, it's a business, but it's my life. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Zach Chodorow to testify. After Zach Chodorow, I will next be calling on Jeffrey Bank and then Terrence Tuberty. Zach?
Yes, hello?
Clock is ready.
Can you hear me?
We
Hi,
hear
so
you.
I'm Zach Chodorow. I'm involved with a bunch of restaurants around the city, including Red Farm and Decoy in the West Village and Upper West Side, and also with the New York City Hospitality Alliance. In general, I think that the city did a pretty admirable job, given the hand that they were dealt, especially so early on in the pandemic. And, I'm really thankful for the Open Restaurants program, which was a very important lifeline to restaurants like mine, allowing us to, stay open during the pandemic and stay in business. And also, I think was an important lifeline to a lot of New Yorkers who were otherwise stuck in their apartments, just as giving them the ability to get out and, maybe take their mind off of the other pandemic issues that perhaps they were, likely dealing with. And also as the, parent of a young child and also a dog, it was nice to be able to go out and, take them out to dine with us, which wouldn't have been possible, I guess, as possible before the pandemic. Making it easy for everybody to just do outdoor seating rather than going through a Byzantine and expensive process that is inaccessible for most restaurants in the city, under the old Sidewalk Cafe program. The Open Restaurants program, I think, was such a success that I'm happy that, it looks like it's going to be more the model for the future, at least in terms of, the ability to do something more like that than returning to the old Sidewalk Cafe process, which just didn't really work. I also think the commercial lease protections were very important, even though they weren't invoked in any of my personal correspondence with any of my landlords. I know it was helpful for a lot of other operators and definitely brought landlords to the table who might otherwise have just insisted upon strict compliance with the lease that was signed, well before the pandemic and not in anticipation of any of the issues that most of these restaurants were facing. I think that as Megan also said, the enforcement was a bit all over the place, and often those enforcing the rules maybe weren't always clear on what the rules were, and that's always going to breed just more and more confusion, for restaurants and everybody working in them who, at least based on my experience, everybody was really trying to do their best. And I think that, as much as possible, if there could be fostered a more collaborative approach to regulation, because most operators are trying to do the right thing. It's either, unclear what they're supposed to do, or at times it's just not possible. And so perhaps instead of, as an operator having so much fear about the inspectors coming in and finding us, if there was a more collaborative dialogue that actually
expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Jeffrey Bank to testify. After Jeffrey Bank, I will next be calling on Terrence Tuberty and then Ashna Singh to testify. Jeffrey?
Thank you. My name is Jeffrey Bank. I own Carmine's and Virgil's restaurants here in New York City, Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and DC. So we have seen this pandemic, handled very differently from lots of different areas across the country. I'm also one of the founding trustees of the Hospitality Alliance. A couple of quick things that I want to get to was just that the mandate's ending today, but I don't think people understand that the struggle of restaurants is really going to end today with this mandate ending for checking back seats. Restaurants in the city have 2 years of crushing debt. They're going to need targeted relief still. Just because we're busy right now, just because you come pre-theater and you see your restaurant is full, does not mean that I'm going to be able to make up 2 years of back rent or all the issues and situations and safety issues that we've had to take on during the last 2 years. So I worry that a lot of people are getting a false sense of security. Landlords are tougher than ever right now on their tenants because they see the end of COVID. So they have no problem if a restaurant wants to go out right now, because it's very easy. We all know that restaurants flip over, no problem. A new tenant comes in, fresh coat, paint, new sign, and new restaurants open. So what's happening right now to a lot of small businesses and restaurants is their landlords are being very tough on them. They see the end is over of COVID. If you want to leave, we'll let you leave, and somebody new will come in. And all that's coming in now is chains or bigger restaurant groups. I'm very fortunate. I'm part of a bigger restaurant group. We do well. We survived COVID not because New York City did the way it handled it, but because our Vegas and Atlantic City stores did phenomenal the last 2 years because the pandemic was handled differently in those areas. So I just want to reiterate very quickly that it's not the same. It's like a tale of two cities. You can't judge a busy restaurant right now thinking all is fine. A couple of other just ideas rather than just complaining. We need some adjustment on city agencies and cure periods. New York City's got to stop educating small businesses through fines. Give us a cure period. I don't know why the fire department gives me 30 days to cure a fine, but the DEP, it's immediate. So I only learned about new grease trap requirements through a fine, not through education. Another idea is maybe start a program called Wage to Train program. Let us hire more interns and students over the summer. There's many studies that talk about how the streets and the cities are safer when kids are working. But to put someone to start to work at $15 an hour, which is equivalent to $31,200, that doesn't have any skills, we're happy to train them in our restaurant industry. You don't need to come up with a new government program for job training. You have it. That's what the hospitality industry does. Give us a discounted wage to train. Let the employee get $15 an hour and let the city split it with us. And this way we can hire more people this summer. I think that'd be a great idea. And my last genius idea would be invest in a texting program. If you want to get more input, not just from the paid lobbyists that come today, do something that you can text people so they can sign up to these committees that we can come to speak and listen. But most people can't sit around and wait 2-3 hours for their name to be turned. I don't know why you just don't text us when it's time. Otherwise, you're only going to get input from paid professionals.
I just want to, Noah, I just want to interject. First of all, thank you so much for those really great suggestions. It's very helpful to hear practical suggestions. So thank you so much. And we'll definitely take those under advisement. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to testify today. And just to be clear, I couldn't agree with you more. We've tried to set up a process to let people have a better sense of when they testify. I am a former restaurant owner myself, so I understand you can't wait around for hours to testify at a hearing. Couldn't agree with you more. So we're going to try to work on a system to try to focus on that.
Well, that would expand, who would be testifying. You might
Correct.
hear from
Exactly.
different people.
100%. So we tried to do a modified system today. We're going to work with the council staff to see what we can do there. So thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Terrence Tuberty to testify. After Terrence Tuberty, I will next be calling on Ashna Singh and then Dennis No to testify. Terrence?
I want to thank the council members for having this hearing. I think this hearing was needed way before COVID. My name is Terrence Tuberty. I am the owner of IGC Hospitality that operates and owns many restaurants in Midtown Manhattan, including Park Avenue Tavern, Refinery Rooftop, Parker and Quinn, to name a few. And I also own Bungalow Bar and the newly Rockaway Hotel out in Rockaway Beach. I have a unique perspective on New York City, as well as I live in Nassau County. So what I saw was the inequity of how government handled different areas during COVID. And just to kind of recap, I think everybody's ideas have been great, but indoor dining was closed in March 2020. New York City indoor dining didn't open until September 30th at a 50% occupancy. Nassau County, Westchester County were open in July of 2020. Now, there isn't a hearing on restaurant recovery in Nassau County and Westchester County for a reason. It's because they've had the busiest seasons of their business lives. You can't get into a restaurant in Nassau County in some days. Why is that? So what I've asked the city council and the SPS is, you are our leaders, and to stand up to power It seemed COVID wasn't in Nassau County, but it was in Queens. It unfairly targeted businesses that were very close to those borders. We lost a lot of business. We also lost a lot of employees to those areas. Jeff Brink just brought up a great suggestion about workforce initiatives. In Rockaway, we developed a workforce initiative. We had 2 classes to try to bring in new employees, to introduce them to the hospitality industry. And successfully, we trained over 60 people and got them job placement for over 50% of them. So another theme that was brought up is operating in fear. Operating in New York City pre-pandemic was fearful. Operating while COVID was going on was intensely painful and fearful. We were inspected 14 nights in a row at a place called Bungalow Bar in Rockaway. 14 nights, different inspectors, different agencies coming in like the Gestapo. When we were just trying to operate, we were just trying to serve our community. We were a place of healing for a lot of people after a long few months of being inside and what have you. So what we need is the SBS, the BL liaison towards government agencies. We need the city council to please stand up to power. It is so hard doing business in New York City. It's nearly impossible. And this is somebody who has been in business in New York City. My family's been in business in New York City for over 45 years. And we want to continue to do business in New York City. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Ashna Singh to testify. After Ashna Singh, I will next be calling on Dennis No and then Susanna Cotin to testify. Ashna?
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ashna Singh. I am the program coordinator for the Commercial Lease Assistance Program team at Brooklyn Legal Services, Corporation A, known as Brooklyn A. I'm joined here with Alham Usman, our director of the Commercial Lease Assistance Program, and our staff attorneys. Brooklyn A heads the Commercial Lease Assistance Program, also known as CLA, funded by New York City's Department of Small Business Services. Brooklyn A provides high-quality attorneys free of cost to New York City small businesses. Brooklyn A ensures that CLA services are available in any language under the sun. My intake team and I are the first point of contact and have been for over 1,800 New York City small businesses. We speak on the phone with small business owners seeking our services day and night. Many business owners have called us crying about mounting rent debts, harassment they face daily, illegally locked out of their stores, and desperate for assistance. These businesses are their livelihoods. We are on the front line making sure New York City businesses are not alone. Since July 1st of 2021, Brooklyn A has served over 500 New York City small businesses, over 100 from the Bronx. Through a grant opportunity over the last 6 months, Brooklyn A supported 110 of our clients and has used $2.5 million to negotiate and put $6.9 million back into the pockets of small business owners. Our attorneys use the grant as upfront payment to negotiate lawsuit settlements with hundreds of thousands of dollars in arrears. Brooklyn A has saved small business owners over $2 million in legal fees. This is our Commercial Lease Assistance Program. I feel honored and lucky to witness such an incredible impact every day. However, we cannot let our business owners know with certainty the future of this program, which is their only support. The city budget for FY21 did not include the CLA program. Only after months of advocacy was it reinstated to the FY21 budget. The FY22 budget provided the critical increased funding for CLA. Brooklyn A expanded the program greatly and hopes to continue to do so in the coming fiscal year. As the face of CLA, I have 2 key asks. 1, our CLA program needs to be a permanent service for the New York City small business owners. It's a critical resource, a lifeline for our small businesses. 2, our impact depends on the tools of leverage available to us. We need a grant embedded into the CLA program so that we may give our small business owners what we all know they need, financial leverage. Thank you for your time today. I hope you all have a better understanding for the need for making permanent and growing with Brooklyn A, the legal assistance program for small business owners, and the impact of grant funding to supplement our attorneys' negotiation tactics. Brooklyn A's CLA program is the only kind in the nation. New York City is a trailblazer in city support for small businesses. CLA is an irreplaceable resource for our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Dennis No to testify. After Dennis, I will next be calling on Susanna Cotin and then Olympia Kazi to testify. Dennis?
Thank you, Chairman and SBS for providing me an opportunity to speak here today to you. My name is Dennis Snow, and I'm the chef and owner of D&G Restaurant, an independently owned Vietnamese restaurant in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I'm grateful for all the initiatives that have been launched under the SBS guidance, such as open restaurants and commercial lease protection during the pandemic. While they've been a great help and we would not survive without them, I feel that we're only at the beginning, and hopefully this forward-thinking momentum will continue as we put the pandemic behind us. As a hospitality small business, we have felt the impact of COVID-19 significantly, and it has forced us to rethink how we approach operating a restaurant going forward. We have experienced significant losses and challenges that we are still digging our way out of as I speak. However, remain optimistic as we are still standing and doing what we love, which is something I feel fortunate for given the losses our industry has experienced. As a chef that has experienced staffing challenges and watched as talented individuals on my team have left our industry due to the challenges of working a hospitality job during a pandemic, I would encourage SBS to coordinate and advocate with local and state representatives to work on initiatives that would help encourage and entice individuals to potentially return to the hospitality industry as we hopefully put COVID behind us and begin to reopen New York City. One item in particular that I would like to be considered that I believe will be helpful for restaurants to help encourage people to return to the kitchen would be revisiting the possibility of flexible employment practices that would allow operators to pull tips with their back of house teams if they also commit to not taking the employment tip credit and paying everyone $15 and above. While I do acknowledge that this is not a one-size-fits-all policy and that it should be an option for operators, not a requirement, I strongly feel that we are behind the rest of the nation when it comes to equalizing the pay disparity that exists here in New York, specifically for our front and back of house teams. Secondly, as brought up earlier, I would like SBS to coordinate with city regulatory groups to take an education first policy rather than a punitive fine policy that currently exists today. As we continue to dig out of the hole that the pandemic has created for us, and we need our regulatory groups to support us by providing us the room and flexibility to be compliant with all the rules and regulations that we all agree are for the public benefit, but that can be very time consuming and confusing for small businesses to implement without their support. Thank you for your time and listening to speak today, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Susanna Cotin to testify. After Susanna Cotin, I will next be calling on Olympia Kazi and then Valerie White to testify. Susanna?
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me. I'm going to read. My name is Susanna Cotin, and I own 3 restaurants in Harlem. I am the co-president of the Frederick Douglass Boulevard Alliance, and I sit on the board of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. The first of my 3 restaurants, Lido, has been open for over 11 years, except for when we closed during the pandemic. To my eyes, independently owned restaurants are taken for granted and not recognized how critical they are to this city. I hear politicians say that they know how important small businesses are, but operating day to day, it honestly feels like the city is trying to make owning a business so difficult that you just give up. For years, I have been telling anyone who will listen to me that the bureaucracy in this city is absolutely the hardest part of having a business. I have also had many operators tell me that they have decided to take their business to cities that appreciate that they are bringing jobs and tax revenue instead of making life more stressful and difficult. One example is the constant surprise inspections. Whether it is the health department, the fire department, or the Department of Transportation, the fact that you can be right in the middle of a busy lunch or dinner and an inspector can walk in and tell you to stop whatever you are doing so that they can inspect is incredibly stressful. Not only because it is so disruptive and almost always comes with a fine associated, but because the inspectors have an incredible amount of discretion. I've had inspectors literally tell me opposite rules from one day to the next, and when I ask how that can be, they said, well, they change the rules all the time. I'm sorry. I have one inspector, a fire inspector, who was coming to visit me so many times and told me that I had to do something that was so ridiculous, I just could not bring myself to comply. When his supervisor came one day and asked how the inspections were going, and I told him what I had been fined for, he literally started laughing and said, well, it's up to his discretion. To me, that had been through this stressful time and $1,000 fine, it was not so funny. And I bring this up only because I know that every single restaurant owner in the city can tell you multiple stories that are the same. My suggestions are as follows. The constant surprise inspections and discretion of the inspector should stop. Have one published list of rules and safety guidelines that are the same for everyone. Then once or twice a year, have a scheduled inspection with representatives from all relevant city agencies or one inspector that is trained on these guidelines. As a restaurant owner, of course I want to follow the rules and make sure that everyone in my establishment is safe. The inspections do not need to be a sneak attack. It should not take 6 to 7 months to get a liquor license when you can go to other cities and obtain the same license within a few days. Lastly, the outdoor dining and street houses have been a huge lifeline. They were expensive to construct, and the same space that could provide parking for 1 or 2 cars can literally save jobs and provide much needed tax revenue to the city. They should be made permanent.
Time expired.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Olympia Kazi to testify. After Olympia Kazi, I will next be calling on Valerie White, and then Jacqueline Takaranti to testify. Olympia?
Thank you. Thank you. So my name is Olympia Kazi, and I'm a founding member of the New York City Artists Coalition and the Music Workers Alliance. Thank you for today, and especially thank you and welcome to Chair Manning. I had the pleasure to work with her around nightlife issues, and I'm very hopeful that she's listening today, and I have high hopes about how we're going to improve things for everybody. So as Paula, Guy, and Ashna mentioned earlier, today I will be delivering actually the comments of United for Small Businesses, for Small Business NYC. It is a coalition of community organizations across New York City fighting to protect New York small businesses and non-residential tenants from the threat of displacement. We focus in particular to owner-operated, lower-income people of color-run businesses that serve low-income communities and communities of color. Small businesses are cornerstones of our city and neighborhoods. They provide jobs, culturally relevant goods and services, and community, as we saw just literally during the pandemic. So during COVID-19, the shutdowns of spring 2020, countless small businesses lost months of revenue, but they still had to pay rent on their spaces, leading to tens of thousands of dollars in rent arrears and protection, eviction, and bankruptcy. Potential eviction and bankruptcy. In New York City, the soaring cost of commercial rents have stayed on trend with pre-pandemic rents, and individual landlords negotiations are not enough to keep small businesses alive. With the expiration of the statewide eviction moratorium, the potential for eviction looms closer and closer each day for those small businesses with crushing rent debt. So these businesses need direct relief funding and often have been unable to access funds through federal, state, or city programs. PPP loans were only available for businesses that had employees, excluding sole proprietors and businesses with other models like the barbershops that rent shares. Even for those who were eligible for PPP, a large portion of those loans could not be dedicated toward operating costs such as rent. In addition, analysis from the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development shows that PPP loans were not equitably distributed and were less likely to reach businesses in low-income communities and communities of color. So for businesses shut out of those opportunities, accessible relief funding from the city is the difference between resolving their debt and continuing to operate and shuttering. So the SBS grant programs and the LMI storefront loan program both ended long before the most vulnerable business owners were able to evaluate the opportunities and apply. Even among those who would have been eligible, many were not able to apply within the short time frame during which the application portal was open. The funding that is made available should be as accessible as possible in order to reach businesses that were not able to apply in previous rounds. Business closures can destabilize commercial corridors and the communities who rely on them for goods, jobs, and services. We urge you to open up another round of grants accessible to those so far left out, like our smallest businesses facing crushing rent debt. And as everybody said before me today, it is high time that we start talking about commercial rent regulations. So a hearing around that would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Valerie White to testify. After Valerie White, I will next be calling on Jacqueline Takaranti and then James Malios to testify. Valerie?
Clock is ready.
My name is Valerie White. I'm the Executive Director of LIST NYC, a nonprofit intermediary committed to closing the racial wealth gap and creating a more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable New York. Thank you to Chair Menon and the rest of the committee for the opportunity to testify today. And thank you to New York City SBS for its longstanding partnership with us at LIST. We recognize the significant challenges that our small businesses have been forced to face over the past 2 years. Of particular concern to us is New York City's minority-owned businesses who have been among the city's most financially devastated businesses during the pandemic. These businesses are facing a dual threat, one of systemic inequity, along with the litany of other pandemic-induced challenges that all businesses have been up against. Recognizing that, our team at LIST NYC is dedicated to assisting minority-owned small businesses weather the COVID-19 crises. During the pandemic, LIST New York City sponsored $13 million of PPP loans to nonprofits and small businesses. And since 2020, we have deployed more than $4 million in grants to over 400 small businesses, preserving nearly 900 jobs, mostly for businesses with 8 or fewer employees. But it's clear that much more can be done through public-private partnerships, and we have 3 main suggestions. First, it is important SBS initiatives create ample opportunity for minority-owned businesses to successfully apply and benefit from city-initiated assistance. We suggest an intentional approach to communicating future SBS initiatives to small business owners and commercial quarters made up of minority-owned populations and businesses. From boots on the ground in these neighborhoods leading in-person outreach efforts to get information directly in the hands of minority business owners, to leaning on community-based organizations and nonprofits to help them get the resources, information, and know-how to minority-owned businesses. Second, we need to ensure that our community-based organizations and nonprofits have a reliable stream of funding that allow them to adequately support minority businesses with the resources and networks that they need to survive this economic crisis. Community-based organizations are at the front line of supporting minority-owned businesses, but too often they lack the reliable stream of funding needed to sustain their own operations, let alone provide adequate support to the businesses they serve. We recommend introducing a dedicated budget line to ensuring qualified CBOs and nonprofits never go without funding, the funding that they need to serve minority-owned businesses. Finally, it is critical that SBS be given the support and resources to provide minority-owned small businesses immediate and substantial financial relief, and the relief programs ensure minority-owned businesses have the long-term support, services, resources, networks, and technical assistance that they need to grow and have a prosperous business. I thank you for allowing me to testify, and will be submitting written testimony as well.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Jacqueline Takaranti to testify. After Jacqueline Takaranti, I will next be calling on James Malleus and then Alita Camp to testify. Jacqueline?
Clock is ready.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and members of City Council. My name is Jacqueline Takaranti, and I'm a small business owner living in the greenest borough here on Staten Island. I own and manage the largest marketing and public relations agency, JMT Media. I'm the first official Native American MWBE in New York City history, after advocating for revised legislation for almost 2 years. And I'm the former second vice president of the Minority Women in Business Association of Staten Island. It's great to be here. Thank you to all of the delegation working on behalf of the small business community in Staten Island. As we celebrate National Women's History, I want to take a moment to thank all of the amazing City Council women that are here today for making history. I want to personally thank Chair Menon for addressing and understanding the complexities of small businesses. The numbers reported from Dun & Bradstreet are not completely accurate and reflective of what is happening on the ground. I am here this morning to talk about small businesses and their stories that are coming to me struggling and unable to take time off to speak. In May of 2021, I talked about yoga studios, cafes, restaurants, and other small businesses that were physically closed and struggling among the thousands of small businesses that faced foreclosure. I previously mentioned that we required support from City Council for accessibility to city funding, adequate accessibility for services, and outreach from qualified representatives that understand the specific needs as a small business. Small businesses locally in New York City need your help. With minority businesses closing brick and mortar commercial spaces at a staggering 36% rate, especially on the North Shore of Staten Island, we are calling on you to advocate for additional funding for small business support. From the annual Making the Grade report provided by the Comptroller's Office between March and August of 2021, the city spent more than $1.5 billion for COVID-related goods and services and contracts. Yet only 11% went to MWBEs and less than 3% of that was allocated to Staten Island. After reaching out to local small businesses, here are a few solutions to help guide small businesses and SBS. Certainly provide adequate and reliable resources from reliable and community invested organizations to distribute content and resources. Provide sufficient outreach efforts. Provide opportunities for small businesses that may not be part of a membership organization to participate in funding for equitable opportunities. I'm requesting monthly neighborhood by neighborhood sessions on capital funding and upcoming programs, because not everybody receives the 4,600 emails that go out once a month. Collaborative partnerships with NYC and company focusing on prospective small businesses that may not have the funding available for their restaurant week or membership services. I would like to invite the commissioner to meet with the Minority Women Business Association of Staten Island and to meet with the small businesses that are on the ground. I want to thank the City Council for working during unprecedented times and for showing up. And we look forward to working with the council to help push through initiatives to help small businesses across this beautiful city. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome James Malios to testify. After James Malios, I will next be calling on Alita Camp and then Marcia Tratner to testify. James.
Clock is ready.
Thank you for hearing us today. My name is James Myers. By way of introduction, I own restaurants in Manhattan, Rockaways, Nassau, Suffolk County. I also sit on the board of the Hospitality Alliance as well as the Hospitality Council with the city and RAISE, which is a labor rights organization. Let me say this. To echo what Jeff said, just because restaurants may be busy does not mean that we are past, that we're in recovery. I know myself, I've signed for over $1 million worth of full recourse personal guarantee loans with the federal government so that we were able not to lay off people again after March 2020. And that's despite the fact that in Omicron and Delta, we saw sales drop anywhere from 25 to 75%. This January had to be the worst on record. And the last two businesses we've opened in Nassau and Suffolk. And I'm from New York. I grew up in Queens. I don't want to drive to Nassau and Suffolk. But I do that because that is where opportunity is, and that is where government has been hospitable to us opening businesses. So how can New York City be better? Here's some practical suggestions from my perspective. First, with regard to low interest capital loans that provide capital to businesses. Very simple, very straightforward. Second, more programs like the RRP, which was the state program that gave $75 million allocated to restaurants to be able to serve homeless shelters and other people in need, and matched a need, which was, having a non-corrupt source of food to people who need it most, and then match that to small businesses rather than, giving it to Aramarks or the sort of, massive conglomerate companies that otherwise take those contracts. Third, with regard, people talk about a lot about language on this call. Look, I'm just going to cut through it on this. Like, I understand it's a city and you got to sort of say certain things and do certain things. I went to law school. I have a hard time navigating the site in English. Okay. Well, you should, instead of wasting time on various ways to check boxes about how you're doing stuff, in various languages, how about make the site very obvious? Big upper right translation, big boxes that say capital loans, regulations with very plain English on the website of where businesses can go and how they can get assistance. If you look at the website, it's very hard to navigate, and a lot of it is consumer facing. Just accept the fact that consumers are not going to these websites to find businesses. That's not going to happen. But what you can do is make it be much clearer in plain English or plain other languages where to go and how to get assistance. and drive people to the website because you have the translate function there, but I didn't even see it right away, by way of example. Finally, I would just say lower regulation, please. I've got a checklist of 50 things in New York City to open a business, and I've got a checklist of like 8 in Nassau County and Suffolk. So please do what you can to streamline that process. Those are my 5 practical suggestions that I hope the SBA can help with. SPS can help with. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Alita Camp to testify. After Alita Camp, I will next be calling on Marcia Tratner and then Patricia Baccato to testify. Alita?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Menon and council members for hearing my testimony. My name is Alita Camp. I am speaking as co-chair of Community Board 8 Manhattan Small Business Committee. New York City must do a lot more for small businesses. It must respond with the enthusiasm with which it has put forth the open restaurant program. Small business vacancies started way before the pandemic. While fine reduction and red tape cutting are valuable, they are not sufficient to stop the loss of small businesses. This city can do much to save the businesses that keep our neighborhoods vibrant. It can create an incubator program for entrepreneurs. It can foster relationships where big businesses could mentor or provide resources to small ones. It can foster districts of particular types of shops, such as the Flower District. It can provide neighborhood maps of shopping. SBS and NYC websites must be better at providing this kind of information. I couldn't find any of the maps Commissioner Kim referred to on the SBS or New York or NYC Go sites. Small businesses are ravaged by high rents and loss of storefronts. Commercial rent control and/or zoning for small businesses may be viable options. The city must look at the impact of development on small businesses. Last year, several Manhattan community boards presented a joint panel discussion on the impact of economic gentrification on small businesses. The effect is not good. For example, every time a new building is built on commercial Upper East Side avenues, we lose not only rent-regulated apartments, but the mom and pops in the to-be-demolished walk-ups. The new market rate housing that replaces it most often sizes its retail space for big box stores and banks or Duane Reade's. The rent is accordingly high and the space not suitable for many needed businesses. In addition, as developers pay ever higher prices to secure large lots, their need for high rents increases. They won't reduce rents generally, even when vacant for long periods. I am told that rent reductions could lead to default on bank loans. The city must work with banks and landlords to allow rent reductions. A small store near a subway stop was going out of business. The owner told me the rent went from $6,000 to almost $20,000 a month. This was without new construction. While market rental rates may vary by neighborhood, the effect does not. Small businesses are lost. Whichever options you look at, I urge you to examine closely the effect of market rate development, the reasons small businesses close, and to take serious, responsive action. The city can act also to get rid of those 15-minute food delivery places that are not stores, create a visual blight, and damage the business of actual small businesses such as bodegas and grocery stores, although CB8 has not voted on this. To say nothing of the danger to the public of delivery guys or women rushing through congested streets. We can no longer stand by and watch the businesses that entice, that delight, that serve New Yorkers and our visitors go out of business. Thank you for hearing my testimony. I intend to submit written testimony as well.
Alita, I just want to thank you for your testimony and just interject to say we are working on the 15-minute delivery claim. As you probably know, I have sent a cease and desist letter to one company, GoPuff, who I'm going to be meeting with, and I'm also working along with Councilmember Chris Marte in terms of legislative solutions on this.
Thank you very much, Councilmember.
Thank you. I would now like to welcome Marcia Tratner to testify. After Marcia Tratner, I will next be calling on Patricia Baccato and then Beatrice Agero to testify. Marcia?
Yes, hi.
Clock is ready.
I'm so amazed that I can testify today. Thank you so much. I am a sole proprietor. My business is called She Weld. I'm in Red Hook, Brooklyn, and I've been in business for 30 plus years in New York City. And it was already really tough before the pandemic, as everyone has been saying. After I had to close because I run workshops which we couldn't have. I do in-person shows. I'm an artist, and we teach welding and blacksmithing. And so it was a big blow, and I didn't have income. And I had a landlord who was pretty unforgiving. And if it wasn't for the Brooklyn A's commercial lease assistance program, I would not be in business right now. I would not have my workshop still going. I have they helped me work out a payment plan with the landlord. So I still have debt to the landlord. They intervened with landlord harassment. And, you know, frankly, I said yes to Ashna to come and speak today, but as I started thinking about it, I was getting so stressed out thinking back on like really how painful that whole situation is and how tenuous I still feel like it is going forward. And just, oh, and I also want to do a shout out to the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. Besides Ashna and the lease assistance program, the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce was my lifeline during this for information, and I am so appreciative. I, like many others, are worried going forward. This being an artist, a sole proprietor, a micro business as it is, in New York City is virtually impossible. And I worry very much that the numbers, as some other people have said, are way undercounted in terms of how many people are here in New York City who've been here, who've, you know, made it through 9/11, made it through Hurricane Sandy as I did, made it through so many things. And it's just, it's almost like it doesn't matter if you leave as an individual, as long as someone else comes in and then the numbers stay the same. So there just has to be more investment, however that is, in helping keep what is, you know, always said, gives this city its life and its vibrancy. But I know so many people like myself who've already had to leave, and this was even pre-pandemic. And I really hope that, I'm not sure, you know, I think lease protection and
Time expired.
Thank you. Yeah, keep the commercial lease assistance program, please.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Patricia Baccato to testify. After Patricia Baccato, I will next be calling on Beatrice Ajero and then Arsen Gurgov to testify. Patricia?
Hi, thank
Clock is
you.
ready.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Patricia Baccato. I'm a small business owner. I own Dutch Kills Bar in Long Island City, Fresh Kills Bar in Williamsburg, 100 Weight Ice, which supplies ice to all boroughs of the city. I would say that the hardest thing for us during the pandemic was the loans that were available to us. We spent hours, sleepless nights, waiting until the websites weren't overloaded. We'd be up at 1 a.m, hitting the refresh button over and over again, trying to get our spot in line to get a loan. Sometimes getting to the last step of a loan and just finding the website crashing on us and not getting there. This happened over and over again for us, both with the city, the state, and the federal government. We currently have loans with the SBS, with the EIDL. The PPP loans that came into us were gone before they even hit our bank account. We had back rent, back bills, and then on top of that, the payroll that we needed to cover for our employees, we were paying out of pocket. Some of our employees have worked for us for more than 10 years. It was impossible for them to get unemployment at the time, so we just paid them. So those loans were gone. And now with the big loans that we carry for the EIDL and the SBS, though we may still have some of that money, we're scared to give it back because what if something else happens? So I think the biggest thing for us is the Biden administration came out with the restaurant relief program, which was largely unattainable for everyone. I don't know how many people got it, but when it was announced, we were also happy that it was going to happen, and it didn't happen. If there was any kind of relief from the loans for people who can prove that, like us, we did less than 10% of our business in 2020 that we did in 2019. And that's shocking, but it was like 7% of our business. Our ice company lost our facility. We were in Queens. We lost $25,000 worth of product and got kicked out of our warehouse. We had to move back in with another business. All this stuff was to say that we felt that we did get a lot of support from our local bid. They helped me move a bus stop that was in front of our business where we could set up an outdoor dining facility. They were very supportive of us, but these loans that are looming over our heads, it might look busy out there right now, but we're paying for them for the rest. I'm paying for them like a mortgage on a house for the rest of, my young professional life. So that's going to be really hard for us. And I yield the rest of my time. I just wanted to give that input to the city on how that's affected us as small businesses.
Thank you. I would now like to welcome Beatrice Ajero to testify. After Beatrice Ajero, I will next be calling on Arsen Gurgov and then Andrew Walcott to testify. Beatrice?
Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify today. My name is Beatrice Ajero and I run Neji Restaurant in Astoria and DeBarry, also a member of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. As a business that's been located in the area closest to one of the highest upticks of COVID cases at its height, it was very beneficial to us to have different inspectors coming at different times to share the different regulations as we move through phases. As I've heard colleagues speak in other boroughs and in other circumstances, I can see how sort of the layering of that might be difficult. But for us, because of our unique location close to a high uptick of cases, it was a welcome reminder at the severity of COVID's impact for our neighbors, for our workers, for their families. And so I just want to highlight that was one of the features of the last year that we appreciated, being able to ask questions and get updates that we may not have received via email or through our other resource networks like the New York City Hospitality Alliance, having face-to-face discussions with inspectors who even acknowledge that there might have been a lot of overlap between themselves and other colleagues who had recently come to see us. It was a welcomed visit from them to understand just how important all of the new regulations were regarding COVID and COVID safety for our team. And with that, I yield my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Arsen Gurgov to testify. After Arsen Gurgov, I will next be calling on Andrew Walcott and Anthony Girardi to testify. Arsen?
Hi, my name is Arsen Gurgov. I'm an owner of a hair salon in Manhattan on Park Avenue. I run Arsen Gurgov Salon and employ 15 people. Thank you for the Small Business Committee for this opportunity to express on this growing concern about commercial rent struggle. As we recall, all the small businesses were promised rent protection from not being able to be evicted. Landlords were still allowed to sue us commercial tenants monetarily, such as myself, for rent and additional rent, and court sided with landlords on summary judgment without any hearing, which resulted sheriffs to leave a personal property of the commercial tenants after the judgment was issued if it was not satisfied. So clearly not of the commercial tenants were protected against landlords as we were promised during COVID-19. It is crucial to have help for proper funding, and tenants are not forced to close their businesses because of past due rent and additional rent or partial rent that's owed currently. It is unfortunate that these cases in court are treated as simple contract laws, which I believe it should not be, and the landlords are taking advantage of this loophole that legislation created. This problem is becoming a massive issue in New York City for many commercial tenants, as I know, especially hair salons. I want to address this to this committee to see if there's any help, perhaps more funding can become available for help, particularly for rent for specific businesses, especially since we have no one to advocate for beauty salons, and created more protection against landlords not to take advantage of any laws that could force businesses to close. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Andrew Walcott to testify. After Andrew Walcott, I will next be calling on Anthony Girardi and then Jacqueline Bernstein to testify. Andrew?
Clock is ready.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the time. My name is Andrew Walcott. I'm the owner of Fusion East Caribbean and Soul Food Restaurant in the East section of Brooklyn. We've been open 7 years now. I'm going to speak about the impact of COVID actually on my business, our response, and our recommendations for SBS going forward. Initially, we made us shut down our indoor dining. Our sales declined or plummeted by 90%. We had no dine-in, no takeout. We had to lay off a lot of our employees. We cut our operating hours by 75%, and we were hemorrhaging cash. In response, we had to open up our fast forward, a food truck we had purchased via a grant from New York City. The truck was purchased in 2019, but it came out and was operational in 2020. So immediately we put the truck on the road. We had to pivot immediately to try to get additional cash to come into the restaurant. And since then, it's been on Pitkin Avenue in Brownsville every day to try to find ways to generate revenue for the company. In addition, we also fast forward our catering operations. Every day we were getting requests for deliveries from different hospitals in Brooklyn, from Brookdale to Woodhill to Kings County to downstate. We were making deliveries to hospitals, homeless shelters, police precincts, even Rikers Island, and a number of churches here in Brooklyn, and different in our hope to bring in revenues during the pandemic in the initial stages. In addition to that, we got some financing from the different COVID relief programs. We got the initial grant from the SBA in April 2020. We got some PPP in 2020 as well, April 2020, and IDA loan in May 2020 as well. Advantage background, I'm an attorney. So I always had my proper paperwork available to take advantage of these programs once they came about. And we were able to rehire staff, extend our operating hours, and get back to some form of normalcy pretty quickly. I think one of the keys for going forward for SBS, I think there has to be some kind of way to get low-cost accounting services to a lot of these small businesses. Many times when you go to these programs, they ask you for your tax returns, your P&L statements, your balance sheet, your 941 payroll statements, your bank statements. If you don't have that paperwork in place immediately, they're going to go to the next person in line. And too many small businesses don't have that sort of infrastructure in place to take advantage of these opportunities. I think if there's some kind of way, the same way tenants can go to landlord-tenant court and get free legal services, if there's some kind of way they can get discounted accounting services, that would help a lot in terms of small businesses. I've been a CPA for 20 years, and many times I would get a bag full of invoices and asked to prepare financial statements at year end. It can't work that way. If you don't have your paperwork available when they come calling, it's not going to work. I think SBS can also consider going to local community boards and making presentations to the economic development committees of all these boards. Many times the members of those committees know the small businesses that can qualify for additional resources.
Time expired.
Okay.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Anthony Girardi to testify. After Anthony Girardi, I will next be calling on Jacqueline Bernstein and then Ryan Cagle to testify. Anthony?
Clock is
Good
ready.
afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and City Council, for this opportunity. I'm proud to say that I was born Brookdale Hospital in Brooklyn, but I now live and operate my business for 32 years on Staten Island. With everything that's going on, there's a tremendous amount of work to be done to turn the city around, but I have committed myself and my board and our team to get this done. I wear several hats as I'm a partner and owner at Partners in Sound Productions and Pro Show Productions. We are a tech, AV, entertainment, and production company. And my other hat was my wife and I owned a plant-based cafe and allergen-friendly business that prior to the pandemic, we were doing amazing. We were meeting the needs of many people on the island that are vegan-based or have allergen and dietary restrictions. Unfortunately, with all the restrictions that were placed on us and the minimal amount of financial relief, we did close our doors in October of 2021. The PPP money was just not enough for us to survive. And it's a shame because Mayor Adams is a big advocate of plant-based eating, and unfortunately, he didn't get a chance to try our delicious food. I am very proud to say that when the pandemic did hit, myself, along with Jacqueline Bernstein, co-founded the Live Events Coalition of New York, representing 12 million people that are in the events business. Along with advocating on a federal and state level, the Live Events Coalition did hold a peaceful rally in Times Square to bring attention to our industry and to try to get a very much needed seat at the table. On a local level, unfortunately, Staten Island always goes unnoticed, and we don't get, I feel, the time and attention that we need. The Staten Island Chamber of Commerce, this SIADC, has been tremendous, but even in speaking to them the past 2 years, they hit many roadblocks and unfortunately did not get all of the information that was needed. I do understand that there was a disconnect between the city and state. The LEC tried multiple times to lend our support and our knowledge with reopening guidelines and how we could safely host events in the city. We did fall on deaf ears, and I really am hopeful that with our new mayor, who truly appreciates and understands the financial benefits and of going out, live events, hosting events, parties, that he will allow us to restart the dialogue with him and his team. It's been a tough 2 years. Our industry was the first to close down. And unfortunately, right now, people think that we're busy again, but many of those jobs that we are doing were booked in 2018-19. The numbers were very different, what we were charging. Now with the increase in cost of doing business, we're actually losing money on all the jobs that we are doing. So yes, we're busy, but we're not making money at all. I just want to say thank you to all of you. This is not going to be the last time that our industry is going to face a challenge like this. And I really need the New York City Council to listen to us and let us be a part of the decisions that are made and give us a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Jacqueline Bernstein to testify. After Jacqueline Bernstein, I will next be calling on Ryan Cagle and then Bill Angelos to testify. Jacqueline?
Hi, and thank you, especially Chair Menon, who I have met before. As I always love to proclaim, as a kid from Brooklyn who grew up on welfare and food stamps, I am so honored to be here. I'm Jacqueline Bernstein, as Anthony just mentioned, owner of Empire Force Events, an award-winning corporate event production company that I worked at from college and then bought. So as an industry leader during the pandemic, I co-founded with Anthony the Live Events Coalition of New York, representing the 12 million affected nationally in the gathering business. I'm also a board of director of NYC & Company, as many of you know, the city's official destination marketing and convention and visitors bureau, and a board of director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. I love to say that I'm sort of like the Andrew Ritchie for events. Like restaurants and travel, events got the media attention we deserve as we were the first to shut down, last to open, and we were drastically affected and by the sacrifices we had to make, and we still are. Unlike restaurants and shuttered venues and travel, however, we did not get any specific financial assistance. Our Live Events Coalition worked nationally and naturally with members of Congress for funding, and locally, our members work with the New York Governor's Office on reopening guidelines for events. There were other states and cities that got assistance from small business services specific for those in the event sector, and we wish that happened here in our greatest city. I don't want to disparage, just being honest. Those of us in events provide for corporate and social groups, for businesses and the public, for meetings, travel, very New York City experiences, etc. And we do so in those very much affected restaurants, hotels, and attractions. We provide logistics, infrastructure, entertainment, decorative design, technical production, transportation, catering, anything you have ever seen at events and more. We are small businesses and we are not financially recovering yet. I am here to ensure we're proactive and we build safeguards with you. Although we are not brick and mortar, what we produce and we schlep in and out of those restaurants, hotels, parks, anywhere for events all the time, we are a real multi-billion-dollar industry nationally and of course significant financially in New York City. My advocacy rallying cry has been, how does a small business stay in business without doing business? And out of adversity has to come some good. I am here to tell you that beyond the payroll protection program, we didn't see any other assistance for our sector. How do we make up for all that lost time and revenue? I myself consulted complimentary with the Mayor's Office of Citywide Events and Coordination providing resources that are still online for the outdoor dining program. However, that was the only time the city reached out to those of us in events. We needed help beyond keeping restaurants and shuttered venues alive because those of us in events work in them. Those of us in events also work alongside those in travel and tourism, which we know is significant financially in our city. We therefore also need to be recognized and protected. We are slowly coming back because busy does not mean recovered. And I'm glad other restaurateurs reference that. A virtual meeting like this being held in person with beverages so we can all toast to each other will be proof of that. As a live event and hospitality professional, small business owner, and champion of New York City, please let's ensure what has changed our small event businesses forever is taken care of by our own government. Reach out to me. I am here to help the city that has helped make me me. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Ryan Cagle to testify. After Ryan Cagle, I will next be calling on Bill Angelos and then Vic Lee to testify. Ryan?
Thank you. Dear committee members, my name is Ryan Cagle, and I'm here representing the Business Outreach Center Network, known as BOC Network or BOC, and our Executive Director, Nancy Karen. BOC Network, together with its CDFI lending affiliate, BOC Capital Corp., pursue an economic justice mission. BOC Network, with offices and community partners in all 5 boroughs, helps diverse small businesses start, expand, and gain market opportunities, and most recently, to survive and recover. BOC Capital is well-known as a contract financing lender with NYC and recently stepped up as an SBA PPP lender. During the pandemic, BOC Network staff joined BOC Capital to provide over $33 million in 1,452 SBA PPP loans. BOC Capital also launched an Entrepreneurs of Color COVID-19 Relief Fund to support underserved businesses. BOC is a resource for small businesses at every stage of business development, for sector-specific assistance for childcare and construction businesses, with staff that includes speakers of over 10 languages. BOC collaborates with NYC Department of Small Business Services in multiple roles, including as an industrial business solutions provider serving Queens Central and Brooklyn East. Our decades-long history of serving NYC-based immigrant and minority-owned businesses became a critical line of support during the COVID-19 pandemic. BOC joined with coalitions, including the Bronx Business Organization Coalition, the Industrial Jobs Coalition, Manufacturing and Industrial Innovation Council, known as MAKE, and others to expand our network of resources and knowledge-sharing practices. Much of this work was made possible through the support of SBS. Initiatives like the NYC LMI Storefront Loan Program, PPE donations, reopening guidelines webinars, SBS's promotion of the Paycheck Protection funding through CDFI lenders and community banks easily brought tens of millions of dollars of relief funding to diverse small business owners who would have otherwise been left out. Most recently, the NYC Small Business Resilience Grant Program was implemented by SBS. The prioritized businesses in low and moderate income communities and collaboration with multiple community partners to ensure grants reached underserved small businesses. As a partner with both NYC and the New York State grant programs, we at BOC can testify to the efforts that SBS made to getting cash out quickly and with less complexity. The COVID-19 pandemic was a sobering reminder of the fragility of our city's minority and immigrant small business owners. BOC has experienced SBS as an adaptive, responsive partner that would go the extra mile to work effectively with dedicated service providers. There have been open lines of communication and mutual problem solving, digging into issues client by client. The interest rate reduction program was also extremely beneficial. And so we asked the committee to sustain its support for SBS and its longstanding community partners. BOC's collaboration with SBS has been a critical component of our work during the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Bill Angelos to testify. After Bill Angelos, I will next be calling on Vic Lee and then Lauren Elvers Collins to testify. Bill?
Clock is ready.
Good morning, Madam Chairperson and members of the committee. My name is Bill Angelos, and I'm a senior staff attorney with Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation, A, known as Brooklyn A. I wanted to address the necessity for our commercial lease assistance program funded by SBS. This program addresses the power imbalance between commercial tenants and landlords. The following are key issues faced by New York City small business. 1, lease is the only protection. Commercial tenants do not have meaningful protection. The lease is the only potential source of protection commercial tenants have. 2, landlords have attorneys. Small business owners are at a disadvantage due to a limited financial means to level the playing field against commercial landlords who are represented by councils. Having an attorney to negotiate rental concession can have a huge relief to many small business owners. 3, personal guarantees. Nearly all commercial tenants have to sign a commercial guarantee. So if the business fails 2 years into a 5-year lease, the business owner will personally own 3 years worth of rent. 4, property taxes. A portion or all of the property taxes passed on commercial tenants. Small business owners pay property taxes to landlords, even though the landlord may receive an abatement from taxing authorities. 5, harassment. Commercial tenants experience landlord harassment ranging from interference to lockouts and worse. Brooklyn A Commercial Assistance Program is the only effective shield against these issues. For example, I represented a small coffee shop that was in arrears and could not afford rent. The business owners had a personal guarantee. I was able to negotiate a waiver of $100,000 in arrears and $400,000 in rent reduction for the remainder of 10-year lease. This business will not be closing for many years. This result, a relief of $500,000 for a New York City business owner, was possible because I was able to use upfront grant money to negotiate with the landlord. We need a meaningful dollar amount to approach landlord with, because that would make them come to negotiating table. The Commercial Lease Assistance Program needs a permanent grant. Without Brooklyn A's team and our Commercial Lease Assistance Program, these type of outcomes are not simply possible. I thank this committee for your continued support of my team at Brooklyn A, our Commercial Lease Assistance Program, and the small business owners.
Time expired.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Vic Lee to testify. After Vic Lee, I will next be calling on Lauren Elvers Collins and then Matthew Muntean to testify. Vic?
Great. Thank you to Chair Menon and members of the committee for creating this space to voice our concerns. I'm Vic Lee, the co-founder of nonprofit Welcome to Chinatown. I'm here to speak on a very specific issue that has impacted Chinatown small businesses and what we believe to be other gentrifying communities. Many government aid programs for small businesses, such as grants and zero interest loans, require that recipients are in low to middle income zip codes or census tracts. This is true for SBS's hard hit low and moderate income, also known as LMI communities program, and SBA's EIDL. So these programs have good intentions and they're meant to have scalable criteria to support the areas that need it the most. However, Chinatown's unique geography has left it out of the assistance programs. 113 is unfairly excluded despite Chinatown being identified as one of the 39 LMI neighborhoods. Using zip code level median income and subsequently census tracts as a determining factor hurts already struggling Asian-owned businesses in Chinatown because of its proximity to Soho and Tribeca. Welcome to Chinatown launched the Longevity Fund, which is the only exclusive small business grant program for Manhattan's Chinatown, to address the multitude of socioeconomic, language, and cultural barriers that prevent Chinatown business owners from getting aid. And our work has shown us there's a great need in 113. We had 62% of our Longevity Fund applicants located in that zip code, and 98% of our applicants in 113 were Asian, and half of those applicants had 100% Asian staff. However, they were excluded from applying. Currently, there is also no appeal process, and businesses within these areas are shut out of funding despite being the target demographic as recipients of these programs. When bringing up this issue, we're told that this is how it's worked and that cannot be the acceptable answer as we try to drive more proactive and accessible solutions. So therefore, we're asking the committee to, one, better understand the potential impact of this criteria that is likely impacting other gentrifying communities. We've also heard this very similar feedback from SBA when we raised the issue, but they're unable to propose alternate solutions. Number two, develop additional criteria that can supplement LMI and census tracts, such as potentially looking at bid boundaries or MWBE distinctions. And lastly, to continue to empower CDFIs and CBOs that are intimately familiar with where their neighborhood's needs are, and to be able to work with them to provide additional funding and proactive outreach. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Lauren Elvers-Collins to testify. After Lauren Elvers-Collins, I will next be calling on Matthew Muntean and then Evelyn Mandel to testify. Lauren?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Councilmember Menon and the entire committee. My name is Lauren Elvers-Collins. I'm the Executive Director of the Church Avenue bid and Flatbush Avenue bid in LMI Flatbush, Brooklyn. We represent approximately 400 businesses as well as a big group of property owners on Church Ave from Coney Island Avenue to Flatbush Avenue, and on Flatbush Avenue from Parkside to Cortellia Road. With our small staff, which recently increased from 3 to just 4 people managing both bids, we are tasked with serving all these businesses to create a cleaner, safer shopping district and a great shopping destination. Just focusing on SPS, I do believe that SPS's work was the best they could do under very challenging circumstances. I hope that the committee sees a lot of opportunities to make things much better before the next crisis. Shortly before we all went remote, our 2 bids were doing work focused on businesses. We shifted entirely a lot of our time to do at-home testing, set up group vaccinations, give out PPE, as well as something that I'll touch on later, creating and printing COVID safety posters and getting them translated into Haitian Creole and Spanish, which at that time did not exist from the city. We only were English-speaking posters. What SBS and the city did that worked. The grants and loans were fantastic when they were still funded. The PPE that was distributed helped us greatly and also helped with our engagement. SBS also instituted weekly and biweekly calls with the bids, which I hope continue, gave us a great source of information. The launch of the Commercial District Recovery Safety Plan, which I served as the lead for Southern Brooklyn, was fantastic. And the hotline that the commissioner mentioned before has been an amazing resource for both the bids and for our businesses. What didn't work was the lack of adequate notice on the shifting policies. It was very hard to keep up with. There wasn't a backup plan for small businesses like many of ours who were not eligible for grants and loans. The open restaurants program definitely favored businesses with more resources. We have hardly any businesses out of all of our restaurants who are able to participate. Some of the opportunities that I hope the city will act on. Provide unrestricted funding to smaller bids. I know this is something that the Councilmember Menon has been championed. We have between our 2 bids about a budget combined of about $500,000. We do enormous amounts of work, a lot of it in our own time. Allocate funds to continue SBS's Small Business Resilient Grant Program. Create one online portal for all emergency information. Can I have a little bit more time?
Yes, sure, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Create one online portal for all emergency information, including state updates. It was so difficult for even bids to keep track when they were not always in sync with the city updates. Build on SBS's attempts at translation, which is on the website, to also include languages on all materials, as well as spoken word versions. We have members who do not have high literacy and they are not able to access some of this information. And increase funding to SBS to allow for additional hiring, especially bilingual staffers, and ensure that dedicated funding is available to maintain that great SBS hotline. And I'll be submitting this in writing as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Matthew Muntean to testify. After Matthew Muntean, I will next be calling on Evelyn Mandel and then Alham Usman to testify. Matthew.
Thank you, Chair Menon and the Committee on Small Business for the opportunity to testify. My name is Matthew Muntean, and I'm a staff attorney at Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation A, also known as Brooklyn A. My nonprofit law firm heads the Commercial Lease Assistance Program funded by SBS and provides free attorneys to New York City's small businesses. The coronavirus pandemic has made clear the fine margins most New York City small business owners must operate their business under. Very few of our clients were able to build a cushion that would have softened the blow of the pandemic, result being that most are behind several months on rent, in some cases with rent arrears of over $150,000, and many are facing imminent eviction. Through all of this hardship, our clients are harassed and degraded by landlords with nowhere to turn for relief. The last 2 years have highlighted why New York City small businesses need continuing support. First, New York City small businesses operate on an unlevel playing field. The most important agreement small businesses enter into is their commercial lease agreement. For centuries, landlords have exercised power over commercial tenants to such an extent that the now standard lease agreement is so unambiguously landlord favorable that it is not an exaggeration to say landlords hold the fate of their tenants in their hands. The smallest defaults by tenants give landlords the right to terminate leases and accelerate rent payments. Tenants waive rights they don't fully understand because they're unable to afford a lawyer who will take the time to review and explain a complicated contract. And landlords are able to navigate a legal system that doesn't take into account the reality of most small businesses' circumstances. Second, the risk of business interruption or failure is disproportionately high for small business owners. Our economic system rewards those who take risks in the hope of greater long-term gain, while those who have accumulated capital are able to risk portions of that capital without the fear of financial ruin. New York City small business owners have no such luck. When they decide to open a business, they're putting their entire lives on the line. When their businesses fail, it doesn't impact bottom lines and year-end bonuses. It impacts whether they are able to keep a roof over their head, whether they can put food on the table, and whether their kids will one day go to college. Finally, the pandemic has shown how New York City small businesses need continuing support navigating the economy of the future. While bankers and corporate lawyers were able to seamlessly adjust to the difficulties presented by the pandemic, the nature of New York City small businesses doesn't allow for the same innovative solutions during times of struggle. If we want New York City to retain the character that makes it so unique, we must provide our brick and mortar small businesses with the resources to succeed moving forward. The solution is Brooklyn A's Commercial Lease Assistance Program. From July 1st, 2021 to the end of January 2022 alone, Brooklyn A was able to secure over $6.7 million in unpaid and future rent relief for New York City small business owners. In 6 months, Brooklyn A provided free legal services to over 500 small businesses. We have negotiated countless settlements and secured hundreds of lease extensions, ensuring our communities will continue to be filled with the diverse, unique, quirky small businesses that make New York unlike any city in the world. New York City small businesses need our help now more than ever. Time expired. And our Commercial Lease Assistance Program is their lifeline. The success of the CLA program shows how investing in our communities has long-term downstream effects that ultimately save the city money. I urge the committee to advocate making Commercial Lease Assistance Program a permanent part of the services available to New York City small businesses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Evelyn Mandel to testify. After Evelyn Mandel, I will next be calling on Alham Usman and then Susan Davis-Ellie to testify. Evelyn?
Clock is ready.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Evelyn Mandel, and I'm the paralegal with Brooklyn Legal Services Corp A, also known as Brooklyn A. For the last 50 plus years, Brooklyn A has provided legal services to small businesses and nonprofit organizations. And for the last 5 years, we've headed the Commercial Lease Assistance Program funded by SBS, offering free legal counsel to New York City business owners. Brooklyn A ensures that services are available in every language our business owners require. In the last 6 months of this fiscal year, our team has saved small businesses over $6.9 million, including reduced rents and waived rent arrears. On top of that, these small businesses spread across all 5 boroughs are able to remain in their spaces for a collective total of 326 years. Brooklyn A managed to accomplish all of this in under a year. I'm here today to emphasize the necessity of the Commercial Lease Assistance Program and a grant program to be embedded within that program. Commercial landlord-tenant relationships are historically one-sided. The landlord holds all the cards. My team has demonstrated that with upfront money via a grant, and that upfront money via a grant would be an essential first step in giving both small business owners the ability to survive and giving my team the tools to effectively negotiate away hundreds of thousands of dollars in arrears for our small businesses. And we also ask that on behalf of Brooklyn A, our commercial lease assistance program services be expanded to nonprofit enterprises. So 4 points in summary, our commercial lease assistance program should be made permanent. We need a grant embedded within the CLA program for it to be successful. The CLA program services should be expanded to New York City nonprofit enterprises as well. And lastly, please trust that Brooklyn A's recommendations for expansion of CLA services come from a place of actually speaking with each and every one of these business owners as they seek our CLA services. Brooklyn A is the front line and often the only line for New York City small businesses. Thank you for your continued support of Brooklyn A and the Commercial Lease Assistance Program.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Alham Usman to testify. After Alham Usman, I will next be calling on Susan Davis-Ellie and then Loisant Gordon to testify. Alham?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and Council members. My name is Alham Usman. I am the Director of the Commercial Lease Assistance Program, which is funded by New York City SBS. Brooklyn A has had the CLA partnership with SBS for over 4 years. My team is the first and oftentimes only contact point for New York City small business owners. CLA, as most of you are aware, provides high quality attorneys to help small business owners throughout New York City's 5 boroughs with their commercial tenancy related matters. To date, we've worked with 1,800 small businesses across all 5 boroughs. Since July 1st alone, my team has represented 500 small business owners in 900 cases, over 1/5 of which were from the Bronx. In 6 months, that is between July and January, we were able to obtain $6.9 million in relief for 110 small businesses across the 5 boroughs. Brooklyn A obtained a $2.59 million grant and converted that into an additional $4.3 million in relief. What that means is that small businesses received waivers of hundreds of thousands of arrears, rent reduction, interest-free affordable payment plans, and are able to stay in their commercial space for a minimum of 1 year, but usually it's a lot more. For example, in these last 6 months, we've negotiated over 326 years of additional lease terms and renewals for businesses across all 5 boroughs. These businesses will not be closing their doors anytime soon. Brooklyn A has also saved over $2 million in legal fees for small businesses. No other grant or small business relief program has experienced the results that Brooklyn A's CLA program has in partnership with New York City SBS. This is simply because we are on the front line and quite often the only lifeline for New York City small businesses. As director of the Commercial Lease Assistance Program, I can share 2 critical realities. 1, Brooklyn A's Commercial Lease Assistance Program must become permanent, and you have to trust our requests for expansions thereof. Specifically, as Evelyn Mandel has just mentioned, the need for nonprofits to be included as part of the Commercial Lease Assistance Program. 2, the Commercial Lease Assistance Program needs a grant embedded within it. Our business owners approach the negotiation table with nothing. An upfront payment is what makes the team, Brooklyn A, effective in negotiating hundreds of thousands of dollars of arrears away. $6.9 million in relief is clear evidence. I thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate the work that you all are doing on behalf of New York City small business owners. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Loisant Gordon to testify. After Loisant Gordon, I will next be calling on Jonathan Forgash and then Pumulele Kunene to testify. Loisant?
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Loisant Gordon. I own Historic Nearest Tavern. It's one of America's oldest taverns, one of New York City's oldest. And, you know, without the assistance of our customers that had safety concerns, we would not be here today. And I think we shouldn't have put so much on customers to do this takeout dining and all these things. We should have got the support we need from the government we pay taxes for, too. And they never forget to collect their taxes. And so we needed that support, and that wasn't provided. The only way I can say that we made it is to thank my customers. And I so desperately want to thank the administration and the people that we elect to serve us to have done that. But we have an opportunity now. I want to stay positive with the restrictions being loosened and more business have an opportunity to try to rebuild in a better way. I really want to thank Andrew Ridgie from the New York City Hospitality Alliance, who have been with us the whole way. Also, the MEND NYC, Ariel Palitz, the webinars and information has been great. This right now with Chair Menon is very vital. In the Army, they have a thing called an after action review, what went well, what we should have improved on, and what we should have never done. I'm going to explain some of the things that we should have never done and that should have been done as well. Number one, there was nothing in place. I do not understand the city of New York, the center of the world, had no real plan in place in case something like this happened. This is a tragedy, and that should have never happened. It's a failure of the administration, a failure of planning, and failure of our local businesses that depended on this, who live really paycheck to paycheck. So we could have definitely done that better, and I call for all the city council members and administration to put some type of planning, proper planning in place, factoring not only just restaurants, but all of the industry, the other nightlife, the other events, Broadway, all those things should now be in place and should have a commission to do that officially, continually, and not just for this moment. The other thing is that we had nothing, we weren't really on the same page. That was the other thing. I had customers leaving to go across on the other side to spend their money because we had this onerous rules. And we even had staff leaving because there was just, we didn't have the same opportunity other counties did. We didn't have that. So that was a big problem. We were isolated when we were dealing with a global pandemic. We act like we were alone. And so therefore the people who were stuck in the middle was us being hurt.
Time expired.
Ready? Wait 1 second. The other thing was that we needed to fund the shutdown. We needed to. I faced a rent. I faced a $1,000 fine with the communication. $1,000 fine when 2 days before they changed the rules with the you got to fill the outdoor dining things. It was $1,000 fine or fixed in 24 hours. It was just incredibly lack of planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Jonathan Forgash to testify. After Jonathan Forgash, I will next be calling on Pumulele Kunene to testify. Jonathan?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I appreciate being able to speak at this event. I am Jonathan Forgash, the Executive Director of Queens Together. We are an organization that empowers and supports hundreds of restaurants and a Plate It Forward program that help feed hundreds of frontline workers and over 250,000 people facing food and economic insecurity since COVID shut down New York City. We're a network of Queens restaurants and community organizations working together to improve the public health and wealth of New York City's largest borough. I'm also on the board of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. So regarding small business services, former SBS Commissioner Janelle Doris and Emergency Response Unit Director Bernadette Nation were a strong resource and our partners during COVID and Hurricane Ida. We have worked with them to distribute information regarding grants, training, education, and COVID-related services. We've worked with the ERU to pinpoint and help restaurants hurt by flooding from Hurricane Ida, and we thank them for their support and good work. That being said, we have identified 3 areas for improved connectivity with the small business communities in New York City. SBS should contract with organizations like Queens Together to connect to small businesses via our boots on the ground grassroots connections within the Queens small business community. We discovered during our own resource outreach that many businesses had not seen or heard about these SBS resources until we got them right in front of them. How many more might have been helped with more effort spent on localized partnership and outreach? Number 2, the ERU needs to be expanded tenfold, at least. They do not have the funding and manpower to support our vast small business community. The ERU should connect and contract with community services and groups such as Queens Together to be their eyes and ears on the ground during emergencies to pinpoint and focus their response where it's needed most. For example, after Hurricane Ida, Queens Together reached out to our network of restaurants across Queens to find out who was damaged and who needed immediate help. We then reached out to ERU and relayed this vital information. And once again, we thank Director Bernadette Nation and her amazing team for their incredible service. Number 3, the resources and information offered by SBS and other city agencies are often complex and overwhelming to the regular people running businesses across New York City. On behalf of mom and pop small businesses everywhere, we ask that you simplify the messaging and streamline the process to get grants and resources. In conclusion, we urge the City Council to create funding that supports CBO partnership with SBS and other city agencies. This will be a powerful local connection network to those in small businesses across New York City. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I would like to now welcome Pumulele Kunene to testify. Pumulele.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the council, Menin. My name is Pumulele Kunene. I'm the founder and owner at Ibata Skincare. I'm a small business, and I am actually located. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I am actually located in a co-sharing space in Brooklyn at Brooklyn Commons. So basically, our store is not on the corridor. So I know there are beads and everything, but usually we get actually a little bit lost because we're not located on the store level. And when the pandemic hit, we had to actually move our business back to our at-home studio. And we found out that we actually had to compete with a lot of other small businesses online and actually making sure that we're doing business, we're able to compete doing business online. And the PPP and the SBS business loans and grants, they were great, but they did not go a long way. As a small business, we found that the information that we were actually given was not streamlined, and it was sometimes we didn't know what really was expected. And most of it favored large and big businesses. And also as small businesses, we found that we had to compete with each other in a very large pool where the grant or the loan is only afforded or benefited just a handful of people. And right now, I know for a fact that I'm having issue with the NY State Small Business Recovery Grant, where they've actually now made it that if you earned unemployment, then you can't actually qualify, you don't meet the criteria. So a lot of us actually do meet the criteria, but we end up finding that because the pool is actually very large, only 10 people are actually, or 10 businesses are only qualified to actually get that grant. So as small businesses, we find that we're really spinning our wheels. We've been actually applying for grants since the pandemic, but if you don't have any support from the agencies that are here today, you find that you're nowhere, you're on your own. So that is what I'm here to actually testify. Thank you.
Thank you. If we have inadvertently missed anyone who is registered to testify today and is yet to be called, please use the Zoom raise hand function, and you will be called on in the order that your hand was raised. Seeing none, I will now turn it over to Chair Menon to offer any closing remarks. Chair?
Thank you so much, Noah. I really want to thank all of the panelists who came out today. First of all, I thought it was just incredible to hear the compelling testimony that all of you gave. And as a former small business owner, I really recognize the difficulty of owning and operating a small business in the city, and also the fact that even coming and testifying to a city council hearing can be very demanding on your time. And so we tried in this hearing to give a better sense of the time frame of when we would call you, and we'll keep trying to improve upon that system. And it was just wonderful to see. I understand from the council staff that this was a very high turnout for this committee in terms of number of speakers. So I think that kind of engagement from all of you is wonderful. We take all of your concerns, your comments very seriously. We will be incorporating all of them, and we're here to support you. So with that, I am going to close the hearing. Thank you.